of time.
O'clock.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Wednesday. It's time for the main show.
And we're just starting the show and that dude stopped playing his music. Ain't that something?
Maybe my psychic curses for him to drop dead actually came to fruition. Wouldn't that be something?
2 houses down is a big old mansion. It's fucking beautiful. The dude that owns it is a guy that owns his own construction company. He's coming back. Yeah.
Nope.
He's redneck as fuck. He's got a huge monster truck out there with a gigantic fucking stereo in it. He's fucking rattling the whole fucking neighborhood.
It's 2 houses down.
2 houses down.
And it's so loud that it rattles the walls of my office.
He's got a fucking huge pool. It's all covered. He'll have parties out there.
And I'm just sitting there going, die!
He'll have parties out there with big old fat dudes, a bunch of ex-cons and fucking white trash girls in bikinis out there.
So just hopefully it doesn't distract me too much.
Yeah, he's got terrible taste in music.
It is terrible.
It's like
it almost
terrible.
Earlier on, one of the songs that was playing almost sounded like Erasure a little bit, which is not bad, but it's just kind of
he's got terrible taste in music.
It's generally pretty terrible.
He listens to country western that's rap.
Yeah,
which I've never heard of that before.
It's awful.
It's country western and rap.
But every few, usually Friday night, he hasn't been doing it the last few Friday nights, but I don't know why he just felt literally half an hour before we started streaming, I was just oh no, the walls started rattling. Yeah. And I was like, oh crap.
The dudes that are making all the money here, they're not fucking come from these universities. They're fucking in construction. Fucking millionaires.
Still though, it's just kind of what's the end?
Should have never gave that motherfucker money.
Right?
He
what's
doesn't
the
know how to
fucking
handle
point?
it.
God, I can't stand people that make noise for no reason.
It just makes
shut
noise
the fuck
all
up,
fucking
bro.
day.
No one cares about you.
Yeah,
Shut the fuck up.
And he's on the homeowners association, so you
can't do anything. Everybody complains about it on Nextdoor.
Yeah.
They're that motherfucker's at it again, but it's on the Facebook group and stuff, but nobody can really do anything.
And he knows the laws. He can fucking play that shit loud all the way up until 10 p.m.
And I can imagine everybody around him are really, because they're hey, we're just trying to eat dinner or hang out with our kids or something like that or whatever, and we're just hearing your fucking music blaring.
What I could do is park a vehicle down there with my own speakers in it.
I've thought about doing it. I used to do that to my neighbor who used to blast Leonard Skinner at 7 o'clock in the morning when I used to work the night shift. And he would sing along too, so that was nice. Yeah. When he was out working in the yard. Yeah. So I used to put big speakers in my window and blast Bad Religion or
he's out there
the Dead Kennedys or something.
That smell! Yeah. Can't you smell that smell?
That's not. Is that Leonard Skinner?
Yeah, fucking right.
Is it?
It's called Who That Smell.
I hate that fucking song.
Smell of weed. That smell that is around you. Yeah.
Well, that's not the smell that I'm thinking of, actually, when I hear that song.
No, they're talking about weed.
I'm thinking of another smell entirely, dependent on how shitty that song is. But yeah, so, sorry about that, but I'm just saying that it's maybe you guys can't hear it because the microphone's right there, but I'm just hoping that it doesn't keep distracting me, you know what I mean? But we got a super chat earlier from Cameron, so thank you very much for the super chat with the little pair there with the little aerobic thing on, which is super
we
cute.
Love to get support. That's what the show's for. The show is here to fucking get money. We love it when y'all send money.
We're here to get money.
Because we like money.
Well, I like money.
Yeah, you like money? I can't fucking believe you like money. What a coincidence.
I know, right? Yeah. So hey everybody, everybody's liking my hair. Thank you very much. Yeah, I really do like this wig. I didn't think it would look good when I first got it, but blue is my color. I feel like every time I wear blue hair, there's something about
pink could look good.
I'm gonna try out the pink wig.
I was looking at another pink wig
that our girlfriend has on. Yeah. That our sex doll has.
Yeah. There's another pink wig I'm looking at. It's a cosplay wig. It's like that one, but better, for about $30. It's on Amazon. I'm thinking I might buy it.
Yeah.
And it's adjustable, so I know you could wear that one.
Yeah. Okay.
It's about that length.
Because the pink one that we got for the doll is doesn't have the clasp underneath to tighten it against your head. No,
that was a cheap wig. That was
so I imagine if you go like that, it goes.
Yeah. That was a cheap wig. It was only $6.
Oh, okay.
It was like a $6.
I mean, these ones aren't horribly expensive, but you
20,
get
30.
yeah, they're like $20, $30.
Yeah.
But you generally do get what you pay for. So if it's
Yeah.
only like $5, yeah, that shit's not staying on your
Yeah.
head unless
that
you're
one-
sitting very, very still.
That one I bought for the fucking sex doll was just, I mean, it looks like a doll wig.
It's a cute
It's
cut
cute,
though.
Yeah.
It's pink. It's like bright pink.
Bright pink. It looks
And it's got like
80s.
little ponytails, and it's a cool cut, but it's just and
it
little
looks
bangs.
80s as shit. It's like something Dale Bozio would wear.
Yeah,
Something
I
like
think
that.
it would look good on me, but I don't.
Yeah.
But I couldn't wear it out because it would just fall off.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but the other one I was looking at, the higher end one, is like that, but a
oh,
lot
okay,
better
but
looking.
a lot better, like
Yeah.
quality.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, Zach says, with all the dragging noises coming from upstairs where he lives, I'm guessing, I'm pretty sure the neighbors are the kind of people that move furniture when they're stressed out. I used to, when I lived in an apartment in Winter Park, like a long time ago, I was pretty sure that I had a family of hippopotamuses living above me because it's just, they couldn't walk anywhere. They had to stomp.
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all. I don't understand loud people. I don't get it. So yeah, CB says that I'm looking beautiful tonight. Thank you very much. That's very nice. Hugo said country rap music sounds like my Jeep group friends.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. I get it.
It's putrid. Something that just shouldn't
I can't
exist.
stand new country
Ugh.
anyway. It just makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
I like old country. Like, I like Johnny Cash and Hank Williams and shit like that. I like old rockabilly shit and all that kind of stuff. But it's just
Here in Florida,
the
we
new
have,
shit. No thanks.
Here in Florida, like to have your true redneck pedigree, you got to be into mud trucking. They got all kinds of fucking. He looks like one of those dudes who's into mud trucking. Big old fucking mud trucks. The dude next to me got a mud truck, but it's a small one.
Yeah.
And out in the backyard. If you don't know what a mud truck is, just go on YouTube and go to a Florida mud truck party, and you'll see. It's just country girls in bikinis on the backs of these trucks going through huge mud holes, and the trucks tip over and they wreck, and girls go flying. They're drunk too,
Of course they are.
and they're listening to rap music.
Yeah.
And now they've that traditionally
Wow.
was rap music.
Sounds like a blast.
Now they've turned country into rap, so it's like redneck rap, like redneck approved.
It's
rap
like my
music.
worst nightmare.
Yeah,
Like if somebody asked me to go
Yeah,
do
it's
that shit,
horrible.
I'm like,
horrible.
no, why don't you just fucking kill me instead?
Yeah.
Holy shit, no thanks.
And that's all they do is they get drunk. Girls, they want to look at these fucking white trash girls in these fucking skimpy outfits. That's what it is. And they twerking and shit, fucking cheeks flying. They're wearing fucking slingshot fucking bikinis.
When
and
you
shit.
said cheeks flying,
Oh, cheeks fucking flying.
When I had a mental image of their
Yeah.
butt cheeks literally flying off and like
Yeah.
up into the sky,
Yeah, and
which would be hilarious.
they
actually.
range from skinny to fucking hot to Becky's to fat girls. It's just everything.
Well, there's something for everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd probably,
they have broad
you'd probably
horizons.
be into it.
They
Tom.
have broad horizons in the mud
That
truck.
sounds like some shit you'd get into.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't like the music.
Yeah.
I just don't like the music.
I don't think I could stand it, first of all. I mean, like, the few times that I've gone to the Oasis...
I get sick of that shit quick.
I'm just kind of like... Sometimes the music is, fine, but it's like sometimes... Depends on who's in there working the jukebox.
Mm.
And sometimes I'm just like, ugh, I gotta get out of here.
It's like going backwards in time.
Yikes. Terrible.
It's still 1992, wherever you go.
Yeah, not like... and not in a good way.
Not a good way, yeah.
Yeah, I mean... but yeah, so...
Pearl
hey,
Jam and Soundgarden and all that shit.
Yeah, which is fine. I'm not a huge fan.
Bucket
but-
Owls and Chains.
But it's better than... I mean, it's inoffensive. So yeah, the show we're doing tonight, going back to some true crime. My
Yeah.
favorite.
It's going to be a crime show.
I've been wanting to do a... I know I say this all the time. I've been wanting to do a show about these two motherfuckers for such a long time. Because I think I've mentioned this before on some of our serial killer shows. It's bad enough that these two aren't serial killers. They only killed one. They only killed one person. A child. But it's bad enough to murder somebody. But then to be an edgelord douchebag about it, like just to frost that fucking shitheadery, that just makes me so angry.
This
So
is 20s or 30s. What?
1920s, yeah.
1920s, yeah, okay.
So these two motherfuckers, their whole thing was, and this was 1920s, so you didn't really, there was a lot of crime, because this happened in Chicago, so you had all the gangsters, and because it was Prohibition and everything. But these two motherfuckers were maybe the first two in the United States that were widely seen as just quote unquote thrill killers. That was their motive. They just killed because they wanted to see what it was like, and also because they thought that they were superior to everyone else and therefore should be able to do what they wanted with complete impunity. They, spoiler alert, found out that that was not the case. And I will say that even though these two boys, they were just older teenagers, really. They weren't that old. They were 18 and 19. They were super, super intelligent. Like, no one is disputing that. So they thought that they could commit the quote-unquote perfect crime. Gonna say the crime they committed, they whiffed it monumentally. Like, made stupid, like, rookie mistakes. Got caught almost instantly. So, geniuses in some ways. Crime, not so much. Not so much geniuses in that department.
I think I remember this case. When Jen was telling me about it, I think I remember the case, but I'm not sure. I might have it confused with another one that was around this time. I think I might have be confusing this with the Lindbergh baby.
Yeah, that's another one that I want, because I don't think we've done a show about that, have we? Did we do a show about the Lindbergh baby? Because I don't want to do one.
Two guys kidnapped the baby, tried to get a ransom for it, but they killed the baby.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like a gay couple, weren't they?
I don't know about the Lindbergh baby. I don't really remember. These two were, because Zach said weren't these two totally banging each other too? Yeah. By all accounts, yeah. Although the weird thing about it is that it was a weird relationship. It was, I'm gonna say it was like a quote what they called a king-slave relationship. Yeah. So I think
top and a bottom.
Well, I think that Leopold was gay, and this was 1924, so you couldn't really, it was illegal in most places and shit like that. Loeb probably bi, I want to say, because he did have a lot of girlfriends and stuff like that too. And I think that he was just leveraging Leopold's homosexuality, like, hey, I'll give you what you want, sex with me, if you'll do what I want, commit these crimes that I want to commit. Right. So it was like a transactional, kind of relationship in that way. And I think that Loeb definitely liked that Leopold was enamored of him. Like, because he wanted somebody to, like, worship him, I guess. Yeah. So it was kind of a weird dynamic.
Here's the thing, man. You saw about it back then, it was illegal. It was, but that didn't matter because fucking people did shit that was illegal all the fucking time. There wasn't very much enforcement, no way to enforce a lot of stuff. And then you had to prove it in the U.S., too. Because there's all kinds of homoerotic stuff talked about in literature, going all the way back to of course the Roman era, but 1800s, 1700s, it was early 1900s, it was always there. I was talking to Saad, he's probably listening, recorded. He was talking about how the United States just kind of became morally decadent over time and how the West got worse, and I was like, yeah, that's the narrative we're sold, but the more you dig back into history, you find out that no, the shit was constant. It was about like it always was. You had heinous murders going way back, fucking crazy ass sex, fucking of all kinds. When you can even go back into Europe in the medieval era, really the only people that were literate were the church. And when you listen to what they were seeing, man, they were saying like all the peasants were just basically, they just fucking plowed each other constantly, and all the girls were pregnant by the time they were 12, and it was just, it was off the chain. It was always wild.
Well, that's the thing, and it just, that's why it kind of kills me that we don't learn, like, from history, because, this crime happened in 1924, and absolutely when it hit the media, big thing about, these kids today with their gin and their jazz and their atheism and their this and that and the other thing. We're getting away from godless American blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, and that's why this happened. Nobody has any morals anymore. And they were saying this back in the 1920s. So every time I hear, like, it's cyclical. Every generation pisses and moans about these youngsters today, these damn millennials, these damn... And it's just tiresome. It's like it happens every fucking time, and there's some big moral panic about the shit. It's the same. It's the same as it's always been.
There is something to it. The person who's always complaining about this is usually a middle-class person that has fucking kind of been coming out from a pretty good family, and they've kind of been living in a bubble. Then they hit 30 and 40, and all of a sudden they realize how other people live, and they're like, man, it's going to fucking hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
It's always been hell in a handbasket, because human nature is pretty much constant.
Yeah, shit's not that different.
And if you
It's
got
really
poverty, you got violence. And if you have fucking high population densities, you have violence. If you have fucking misfit incel dudes, who there's no way he's going to reproduce, you're going to have fucking weird shit like sex crimes, okay? Because he knows he's hopeless. Or he's got a woman, but he just can't scratch this itch, and this itch has to do with homicide. You know what I mean? Because that's where the serial killers come from, which is extreme fetishism. And it's always been around, always.
Yeah.
And you can go back and look at Albert Fish. That was turn of the century shit. When was that? 20s? 18...
I don't even remember. It might have been earlier.
1815 or something when he started, I think.
Look at fucking H.H. Holmes. That was
H.H.
before
Holmes,
then,
yeah.
too. Look at Jack the Ripper. That was 1888, for Christ's sake.
But if you look at H.H. Holmes and you look at Fish, those crimes exceed the kind of fucking cruelty that you would even have today.
Yeah.
The shit he was doing. Eating little kids and shit.
Yeah, like, even now, like, serial killers be like,
what the fuck? Yeah.
bro.
Putting needles into himself and just living with needles up in his taint.
That's what I mean.
Just weird dude, man.
There were fucked up. There have always been fucked up
Yeah.
people. I don't truck with this whole society's going to hell in a handbasket. Like old people always say that kind of shit, and it just gets on my fucking nerves.
In the Roman era, it was really cool for rich kids to go out and fucking and stab and rob and kill somebody down the hood. That was so they could get their street cred. It was like a fad. They say that Julius Caesar, when he was a teenager, went out and killed several people in these robberies. He didn't need the money. It was just a thrill thing. And
yeah, well, that's the same thing.
Yeah,
going
and
on
evidently
here.
rich kids were doing that. So
Same thing going on here.
Kind of like gangster culture.
Yeah.
They had that shit back in ancient Rome. So like nowadays it'd be like, well, we got to do a drive-by. We're not real if we don't do drive-bys. That shit's real. Let's go do a drive-by. They were doing that shit back in Rome.
Yeah. Like I said, it's no different.
Yeah.
If anything, I would argue that it's better now because at least people are fucking aware. Most people are like aware of the shit and are horrified by it.
People kind of know what human nature is now.
Right. Whereas like back in the day, people were like, I suppose so, and they would just do it. And
back in the day, you could just get on horseback, you and fucking 50 of your friends, and you can just ride around and just rape and pillage entire towns.
Yeah, pretty much.
And nothing would happen to you.
Nope.
Until some king called out an army to track you down. Yeah, you could do it back then. No forensic science.
Yeah.
No legal system. Nothing was no unified legal system. Nothing was really legitimate per se. Everything was just traditions and warlords, basically. Those were the days.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you have fun in your time machine going back to that shit. I'll stay right here, thanks.
Yeah. Basically, Mad Max.
Wouldn't be too fun for me, would it?
Basically, it was just Mad Max. Yeah.
Xana says, imagine getting caught in the 1920s. They barely had fingerprint technology. Well, that's what's so, like, fucked upedly hilarious about this case, to me, at least, because these two chodes actually thought that they were superior to every other human, and they were so smart, and they were so smarter than the cops, and it's like they'd spent all these months like coming up with the quote-unquote perfect crime, which was dumb as fuck, really, which we'll get into. But it's just kind of like, so they did that, and then they made completely stupid rookie mistakes. Anybody that watches true crime shit nowadays would never have made any of the mistakes that these guys made, and like they got caught like immediately.
Yeah.
And it just blows my fucking mind that they really thought that they were good. They really thought they were going to get it. They were super cocky. They really thought they were going to get away with all of this shit, and they didn't.
All right. So, are there any comments or we can catch up on?
Yeah, Oscar said these were horrible people. They were.
Yeah.
They never had remorse. Yeah, they didn't seem to. One of them didn't live that long.
That's
Spoiler
Oscar
alert.
Perez?
After, yeah.
Okay. What's up, Oscar?
One of them didn't live that long after going to prison. The other one actually spent a long time in prison and actually did some good shit, but I don't know if he did it for the right reasons, but I mean, I guess at least he did something with his life, and he actually got paroled like later. He's dead now, obviously, because this was a long time ago. But yeah. Let me see. Zach says the 20s sort of sucked, but for the love of God, can we please bring back Art Deco as an aesthetic? I agree. Art Deco and Art Nouveau, probably my favorite art movements.
I actually don't think the 20s sucked.
My whole bathroom is done like Art Nouveau.
20s didn't suck, especially if you had money. If you had money, fucking 20s would have been
Well,
awesome.
if you have money, every time is the best time for you.
Yeah. If you had money in the 20s, you had access to their top of the line shit. And they had good fashion then, and they had cool girls, Louise Brooks types.
I did love all the, like I said, I love the whole aesthetic of it.
Really, who was behind it in the 1920s were the dudes. The dudes were behind. A lot of the cool chicks were ahead.
Yeah.
Just look at Louise Brooks. Her fashion sense and everything. She was cool. She would fly today.
Yeah, she could totally. Allison said Jenny was the victim, a cousin of one of them or not. I've heard both. I believe he was a second cousin and also a neighbor, which again, dumb. But yeah. So yeah, let's get into this case. I think Phantom said show about underwater sea treasures or lost civilizations being found could be decent, just saying. So I did write that down.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put that in the next poll.
Yeah, lost treasures and shit.
Yeah. I don't remember if we've done ones like that.
We did some stuff about the sea.
Yeah. I think we've done like ghost ships and stuff like that. I'd have to look at like the stuff that we did before. But yeah. All right. So let's get into this. So Leopold and Loeb. This happened, as we said, in the 1920s. They actually did murder a 14-year-old boy. This happened in Chicago, Illinois. And at the time was known as the crime of the century. More because, one, because of the shocking nature of it. Two, because it was like a huge media sensation, like all over the world. It was in the newspapers and stuff. Mostly because, as I said, Chicago, particularly at this time, there was a lot of crime, obviously, because of gangs and prohibition and everything, like, mobsters and stuff. But this happened in a very, very affluent suburb, and the two perpetrators were sons of very, very, very wealthy families who had been afforded every privilege in life, and yet still did this bullshit and thought they were superior to everybody. So there was that too. So, okay. Here we go. Let's talk about these two motherfuckers at first. By the way, there is a great, I love Time Suck. I think I brought it up before, like podcast with Dan Cummins, and he did like a 2.5 hour like Time Suck on these two. And it's super, super funny. All of his shit's super funny, but yeah, this one was super funny. I listened to it yesterday. So let's talk about Leopold first, because he was the older of the two, although by all accounts, it seemed like he was this, I guess if you want to call it like a dom-sub kind of relationship, it wasn't quite that extreme, but he was kind of more the sub. Because even though he was the smarter of the two, he was the less popular. I guess he was like the less socially adept. You know what I'm saying? Because he was scary smart. I have seen ranges of his IQ tests from 200 to 220.
I didn't know they went up that high.
Well, yeah, and then I've seen some that said, oh, well, they tested his IQ and it wasn't even on the chart or whatever. It does go up that high because I think the dude who's the guy that has the highest IQ now? It's a Korean guy, I think. And I think his is 200 and something. But yeah, so I don't know what it was exactly, but it was in the 200s. Now, so he was born in 1904. He was a Chicago native. Nathan Freudenthal Leopold Jr., because that was Nathan Freudenthal. Leopold was also his dad's name, I guess. Now, he was actually the third son of a very, very wealthy German-Jewish immigrant family. And he was seen as massively intelligent, like, from the jump. He was a child prodigy, actually. They said that he said his first words when he was 4 months old. And he could later speak. They said he was familiar with 15 languages and could speak at least 5 fluently. I think he even spoke like Sanskrit and shit like that. Very, very intellectual, but, kind of nerdy, not real socially adept, as I said. He actually graduated high school really, really early and then went to the University of Michigan like when he was still a teenager, and actually graduated from I believe the University of Chicago when he was like 17 or some shit like that. So he was really like accelerated, you know what I mean? And he was actually planning on going to Harvard Law. Now, he was also a big ornithologist, and he was nationally recognized as such. Like, he wrote all of this stuff about birds and stuff like that, like when he was 15, 16 years old, and it was, nationally, published and stuff like that. So he was like well known as an expert in ornithology even when he was still a teenager. So like I said, creepily, weirdly, nerdily smart. Now, by contrast, Richard Loeb was a year younger. He was born in 1905. And he was also super, super smart. I've heard his IQ was about 160, which is still genius level. Not like 210, but it's still up there. Now, he was the third of 4 sons. His dad was very wealthy, was a lawyer, and had been vice president of Sears Roebuck. So they had money. They had, mansions, whole entire staffs, like maids, chauffeurs, the whole fucking deal, summer houses, all of that. So super, super wealthy. Now, he was, like I said, he was also really smart, and he also graduated high school early, but he wasn't as quote-unquote nerdy as Leopold was. He was real into, like, sleazy crime novels, like in magazines and stuff. Like, he'd keep them under his bed and shit. Like, yeah, like porn.
I was going to say that was some weird shit. I remember when I was like a little kid in the 70s, you'd run across crime magazines.
Yeah.
They had lurid photos.
Oh, yeah.
On the cover. And then, like, in the inside, it was like basically like crime porn. Hot women and looking vulnerable with like a knife blade coming down.
Yeah, I think that's what appealed to him.
And I was just like, look, that's some weird shit. It's kind of like a BDSM.
Yeah, and I think they could get away with it because it was loosely based on real crime. So they're like, well, it's true crime, you know what I mean? But it was fetishistic.
I think it was more like fetish than it was.
For sure.
Than it was about the crime. They were fetishizing crime.
Yeah.
And it was all just kind of disturbing pictures. They're real pictures, too. Some of them were drawings, illustrations, too.
Yeah.
But I remember they were right next to all the fucking, like, gun magazines.
Yeah.
I'd go look at the gun magazines, looking at machine guns and just shit like that. And then just True Detective. Mm-hmm. And then they had Soldier of Fortune.
Yeah.
Shit like that. But True Detective stood out as being, that was some kinky shit. But they were selling to as if it was legit.
Right.
Magazine. I didn't understand it at the time.
I think it was still seen, particularly in the 1920s, it was still seen as like, like lurid and like trashy.
Yeah.
Hence why he hid them from his parents.
You're right, yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people read them. But yeah, it was kind of considered like low class.
Real low class.
You know what I mean? But he was like super into them. Let me see. Oh, Allison says, yeah, I was going to bring this up. Check out the movie Swoon if you're interested in this case. Also based on the case is Compulsion. Yeah, that was actually based on a novel, which it's kind of a fictionalized account. The guy that wrote it actually wrote to Leopold in prison and said, hey, I'm going to write this book about you. Can I do that? And he was like, no, I'd rather you didn't. But he did it anyway. And because, they said he couldn't sue. I'll get into that. But then they made a movie about it, which I have not seen. But if you've seen the Alfred Hitchcock movie Rope, it is loosely based on this. Yeah. Loosely.
Talking about those detective magazines, it kind of jogged my memory. Wasn't BTK way into those?
Mm.
Yeah, I think it was.
Now that you bring it up.
Right. My generation really... They were going out of style by the time we were old.
I used to see them at the bookstore.
Yeah, I would see them too when I was a kid. I'd be like, what the fuck is this? They kind of confused me at the time.
Yeah.
Because they didn't look like they should be in the same magazine sections.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you had fucking Eerie and Creepy, and then Guns and Ammo, and then you'd have Soldier of Fortune, and then next to these detective magazines.
Yeah.
And the detective magazines I could remember as a kid going like, this doesn't look like it belongs here. Looking back on it, it was porn-like, kind of.
It is kind of porn-like.
Yeah. Because they were pretty sexy women in bed with a scared look on their face, and then it'd be like a knife coming down, and you could tell it was like a shot like out of a slasher flick.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that in there, and then a story about what happened to some chick. But I wasn't about to read that as a kid. But there was a lot of those photos, and these fucking hot women in fucking negligees and shit. And that's what BTK was trying to emulate when he was taking pictures of himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I understand it.
It's it's a fetishized.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not gonna criticize it too much because holy shit, like the true crime industry now, and I've written books about true crime, and it's just kind of like the true crime industry is just massive, and people like it, and I understand why people like it, and I think most people like it not for a weird fetishistic reason, but I think they just find it like I just find it interesting because it's so fucked up.
It's two different things. I remember seeing those crime magazines, and they were definitely men's magazines.
Yeah.
Some dude was probably getting off on those photos, jerking it to those photos.
Oh yeah,
Some
definitely.
dudes were. They were. Women are looking at more of the literary horror aspect of it, of thinking of how horrible it would be if that happened to you, and I think women are kind of living out a fucking lurid fantasy.
Or we're getting tips.
Or getting tips on
if
how to
some
get
shit
around
happens.
That too, yeah.
So it's like that. Like, what would we do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of thinking of how to protect yourself.
Although, based on my research, women do kind of have kind of a masochistic side.
Yeah, that's true too.
Where there's something they're afraid of, so in this fantasy they face that fear, and kind of like go through it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same thing which some people have argued about horror movies. It's like you're releasing, fear and anxiety and things like that in a safe environment. So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, true crime, you could argue that's a little bit more problematic because you're watching something that actually happened to somebody, which is a little bit more fucked up than watching something that's completely fictional. But
she watches these true crime things, and I can watch like one of them. She'll watch like 3 or 4 of them. And
I watched like 5 of them in a row last night.
I'm slowly getting more and more depressed. I don't like them.
Because he says to me, like last night, I was like, I come in there and I was like, what do you want to watch? I don't care.
Yeah.
He always says, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you're not helping me because I know if I put something on like that, he's going to complain.
Well, no, I enjoy him too. I just have a different...
But because I'll just put on a whole series and watch it for hours and hours, and it's like I get upset. Like I'm watching it and I'm like my eyes are tearing up and I'm just like, holy fucking shit, this is the worst. It's the worst. Like in some of the ones we watched last night, I was watching Evil Lives Here. If you've heard, it's on HBO Max, I think.
Yeah.
And some of the cases on there, that's when it's a member of your family or somebody like your husband or wife or whatever, and they flip out and like kill your children and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And it's just some of the ones we watched last night were just fucking horrifying. And it's just like, and some of the people, and then they'll have the people on there that it happened to. And holy shit, this one girl, she's like a goth chick, and she was like a tattoo artist.
Yeah, she was cute too.
Oh man, she got shot with an AK 8 times.
8 times, dude, lit her up with an AK.
And she survived.
Her ex-boyfriend.
Her ex-husband.
Ex-husband, yeah.
Her killed her unborn baby,
her new husband,
and killed her new fiance.
And then she was pregnant, carrying his child. She lost a kid.
Yep.
And for nothing, and really. And the
awful.
Dude that did her ex-husband was like a douchebag.
God, it was awful.
He was just like a douche. See,
and just watching her was just breaking my heart.
That's the thing that frustrates me. Being ex-military, airborne infantry and shit, I got no fucking problem with violence. None. I fucking like it. But it's got to be goal-directed. You know what I mean? There's got to be a reason for it. And it's usually between men in my mind. It's like something out of Conan. But just doing this shit because of sexual reasons and fucking because she left you or... No.
And she left him because he was abusive.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this is a waste of... Why are you killing these people? I can even rationalize to myself... This is an enemy population, and our bombers are going to fly over it and fucking drop bombs, and some are going to fall in these neighborhoods, and there's going to be a bunch of kids who are asleep. They're going to get burned up. I can still kind of rationalize that to myself, because at least there was a reason.
I mean, that's still fucked up, though.
It's fucked up, but that's fucking... Look at what we did to the Japanese in World War II.
Well, I know.
We burned down all of Japan and killed fucking... I think it was 63 million Japanese people. But they don't tell you that. Okay. I think... No, it wasn't that many. It was 63 cities we burned down, but it was millions and millions of Japanese people.
Oh, yeah.
Burned to death. Because their cities were made out of fucking wood and paper, basically.
Yep. Great.
Yeah, not good, man.
Not proud of that.
Not good. Fucking, they said even the bomber crews had fucking horrible...
Well, I hope so. Jesus Christ.
They said they could smell burning hair and shit as the second waves were going.
No wonder people were so fucked up when they came back from that.
Guys were saying that they could hear screaming, or they thought they heard screaming. But it was in their
I don't
mind.
think I would ever recover
Yeah.
if I had to do something like that. I would just be...
Well,
I'd probably just put a fucking gun in my mouth, to be
The
honest
reason
with you.
was is that the factories had all been bombed, so people were all building war material in their homes. You couldn't target them. That was Curtis LeMay. He says, okay, well, that whole city has to go then. And that's what they did. Well, anyway, I can rationalize that better than I can just some dude doing it just because she left him. Or just because he wants to get his rocks off. You're going to have to die, bro. If I come across you, I'm going to kill you.
I mean, that's what I mean. And
All
it's
right.
like a couple of those,
It's
like,
gonna
look,
be slow,
I'm a
too.
pretty generally nonviolent person. I'm not real super into the death penalty or anything, but there are some cases where
yeah.
some of the ones I watched last night, I was like, they were like, well, this guy might get out of prison. I was like, somebody just needs to go pop him in the back of the head quietly and just bury him in a garden
That's what
somewhere.
the mob was for, man, and organized crime. They're good for that.
Because let's do the world a
Let's go
favor,
ahead.
okay?
This dude right here,
He's
getting
not
out.
contributing
Yeah,
anything to the
right.
human race.
Yeah, dude was a fucking serial rapist.
And here's the
drugging
thing.
up women and just raping them and videotaping them.
And yeah, that guy. Jesus Christ. Fucking, how many women did he
He
rape?
got 72 years, but then they
Holy
changed the
shit.
laws around. He was going to be out like 3 years later.
Yeah. That's fucked up. But yeah.
That's good. That's a good time to call the mob.
That's what I'm
Mexican
saying.
mob,
Let's
yeah.
just call somebody and just have
They'll take
somebody
care of it.
quietly take him out.
Yeah.
Because we don't need that energy on the earth, really.
No,
Yeah.
I'd do some of that Ivan the Terrible shit to that dude. Get that big ass frying pan, fucking Ivan to tie you up. Get that frying
mean,
pan
I
nice
do
and hot
kind
with
of-
some grease and
I do
fry
kind
you
of
on
feel
one
like-
side and flip you over on the other side.
I do get, because sometimes, like, people that do really horrible, egregious shit, I was always kind of like, man, I kind of feel like they need to suffer some.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, but they won't learn anything. So maybe it's better for just humanity at large just to pop them and,
Thing
like,
is, though, is I'm so
forget
evil.
them.
I don't care if they learn anything. I would feel better.
Well, yeah,
It's for me.
yeah, I mean, as long as you, yeah. Well,
I would
yeah, I
feel
mean, as
better,
long
but-
as you know it is for you.
Yeah,
it's not,
yeah,
it's not
that's-
for them.
no.
They're not going to learn anything.
No.
But that's kind of interesting because this is going to come up in the Leopold and Loeb case because they, after they got caught, spoiler alert, they actually were up for the death penalty because they would have been hanged back then for this. But they didn't get it, and there was like a lot of... It was kind of a big aspect of the case, like after they got caught. So we'll kind of talk about that too. I don't know where I stand on it. Do I think they should have been hanged, or, do I think the judge did the right thing? I'm not real sure. I mean, it turned out okay that they didn't, but I'm not really sure where I stand about that. So yeah, so these two, like I said, Loeb was by far the more outgoing of the two, like by a large margin. He was he was really smart too, really accomplished. Obviously his family was very wealthy. But he always had lots of girlfriends. He was very, very popular. He was very charming. He was invited to all the parties, shit like that. Whereas Leopold, like I said, was more like the super, super smart, super nerdy, and people didn't really like to be around him type of thing because he was really off-putting. So that was kind of like the dynamic that they had going on, even though they were both kind of from the same. Well, they lived only a couple of blocks from each other. They grew up from a couple blocks from each other.
Can I put some ice in that for you?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Want me to spike it a little bit more?
Yeah, that'd probably be good.
Because I don't have any more
Ginger ale, yeah. I mean, either that or you could mix some other shit in it. I'm not picky.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get more ice, and when you finish it, I'll make you new one.
I'm just saying I'm not picky. But yeah, so where they grew up was called Kenwood, which was on Chicago's South Side, which at this time period that's where all the super, super wealthy people lived. Like I said, mansions with whole entire staff and everything like that. So we're talking super, super wealthy people. So, thank you. And I think that the Loebs also had a summer house in Michigan, too. So these two actually kind of knew each other. They grew up in the same neighborhood, obviously, so they kind of knew each other, knew of each other. They went to the same schools and stuff when they were growing up. But they didn't really hang out until the early to mid 1920s. They both went to the University of Chicago and started hanging. They were all in a group of friends, I guess, that hung out together. And the two of them kind of Like I said, I'm not really sure what it was exactly, but Leopold for sure was very taken with Loeb. I think that he recognized something similar to himself, like a kind of a kindred spirit type of thing. And I think that he liked that Loeb had what he didn't have. Like I said, that he was very outgoing, he was very popular, he was very charming. Just girls flocked to him and everybody loved him and shit like that. And Leopold didn't really have that. He was, like I said, more of a loner. So I think that that was another thing that attracted him as well. So the two of them started hanging out like a lot more. Now, as I said, they had kind of, and Zach said this sounds kind of hot, this whole, I believe they did use the words king slave. They did develop a thing where, because they found a bunch of their letters between each other, and I've read some of them. There's a book I read a couple books, like short books about this. There's a book called Killer Queens, which is like a whole series about, gay killers. And this was one of them in the series, and they have like a bunch of their letters like reproduced in there.
The Killer Queen was Freddie Mercury.
Well, yeah, everybody knows that. Well, that's, that's why they call it. But yeah, so they don't say in the letters, they probably don't say anything outright, but it's pretty obvious that what they're talking about. And as I said, they got to a thing where Loeb really, really wanted to commit crimes. I mean, that was his thing. He loved those crime magazines, and he was just he loved the idea. I don't know if it was just maybe because he was really, really smart, he was really, really rich, and he was probably really bored, and he just wanted some kind of new sensation or something, or he liked the taboo of like doing it, I guess. So he wanted to do all these crimes, and he knew that Leopold was essentially in love with him. So they had this kind of arrangement where he was basically like, well, I'll have sex with you if you do these crimes with me. And Leopold liked that arrangement. So he's like, okay, yeah, that's what we'll do. But like I said, it was almost kind of like a little bit of a dom sub kind of thing, because Loeb, even though he was a year younger, was kind of the more dominant of the two, I suppose. So he was kind of the one that called the shots. So there was that.
It's a BDSM, man.
It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Another thing too, that and keep in mind that these two are teenagers. They're not men. You know what I mean? They were, when they were in college, you can say, oh, college students are in their 20s. No, they were 15, 16, 17. They went to college really early, and they graduated from college really early. By the time they were 18, 19, they were already out.
Yeah.
So they're young.
Yeah.
When this is all going on.
And they think they're going to do the perfect crime.
Teenage boys, man. What the fuck?
I'll tell you something.
And smart teenage boys, it's like they think that they're the only people that have ever thought of anything ever.
IQ is not a fucking replacement for experience and understanding human nature and your place in the system. And fucking a lot of these guys can't foresee who they're going to be up against in the cops. They got fucking hard-boiled motherfuckers that can figure out anything, and they know your game.
I mean, some cops are dumb fuckers too, but it's just kind of like a lot of people are dumb fuckers. A lot of the
investigators, but a lot of investigators fucking, they're streetwise. The streets have its own wisdom.
Yeah. Well, and somebody brought up earlier that it's like, book smart, but not really
right.
Street smart.
Right. I didn't see
Clearly, they were not.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now, so the two of them too, because they were teenage boys and they were the fucking worst. They both got super, super into Nietzsche. In particular...
Which would be easy to abuse that.
Well, we're about to find out that's exactly
not understanding what Friedrich was talking about.
Yes, exactly. They were, in particular, very enamored of the idea of the Übermensch, or the Superman. And they misinterpreted this concept to basically mean, well, we can be these supermen, which means that we're superior to everyone else and we can basically do whatever we want without consequence. I mean, that's kind of how they read it.
Yeah, but that's not what Nietzsche was
Well, no, that's not what he meant. But if you're a teenage boy who's smart but not as smart as you think you are, that is going to come as like, oh, well, we're smarter than everyone else, so that must mean that we're superior and that we should be allowed to do whatever we want to these camels or whatever they called, whatever Nietzsche called them, because we're superior, so we shouldn't be able to, because we're above everyone else.
There's a lot of people who've interpreted Nietzsche's writings in different ways. Nietzsche was more, he wasn't really that much of a philosopher. He was more like a commentator, you know what I mean? He didn't like philosophers. He thought they were full of shit. He says why. The Übermensch, most people interpret that as basically he's talking about the next step in human evolution. It's not human. It's the next step in human evolution, and they wouldn't require religious morality. That's among a lot of other things. He didn't clearly spell it out.
Yeah, I interpreted it as he was just basically saying we need to get to a morality that's not based on old
religions,
traditions or authorities or things like that. That's kind of more what he was talking about.
He said you had to go beyond concepts of good and evil and just to go for things that worked and didn't. You know, you go do things that worked and stay away from things that didn't work. In other words, what was useful. That's basically what.
Right.
Which, of course, you know, because if your concept of good and evil was just based upon old traditions and old, you know, things that are not really based in logic, you know, then you can be in trouble. But he's not talking about being amoral.
Yeah, and just doing whatever the fuck you want to because you're superior to them.
Right.
But that's how they interpreted it.
Yeah, that's not what. And Nietzsche did kind of. This is before Darwin, so you know what I mean. He didn't know anything about DNA and fucking how things were inherited from one creature to the next through genetic inheritance. But he did kind of know that he did kind of have some understanding of maybe what would have been called today kind of like epigenetics. But that's not the important part of Nietzsche. The important part of Nietzsche is other things in the books that he wrote. He was also kind of funny, but hard and very obscure to read in English translations. Evidently, in the original German, it's also obscure.
Sometimes I think that people of a philosophical bent write things specifically in a very obfuscating manner, so they'll sound smarter than they actually are.
Well, Schopenhauer did that.
Looking at you, Deepak Chopra.
Did that. They would just write. They were just wordy motherfuckers. They didn't have laptops. The more wordy you were, the fucking more impressive you were. And you kind of, a lot of it was bullshit.
Well, like I said, I'm not shitting on, like, I really like vocabulary. I really like words. I really like language. You know, and I've been made fun of sometimes for using 50-cent words when I could have used something else. But it's just kind of like, I don't know. I do kind of feel like there is a thing where sometimes people will use all these really highfalutin words just to make themselves sound smarter or make the concept sound a lot deeper than
another thing is humans' reactions to their work. In those days, there was no television, no internet. You had to write a book. When you wrote a book, people had to read it. That was the medium. And there's something about reading a book and having something physical in your hand. You kind of give more weight to it because shit, somebody wrote it down.
And then they printed all this pages.
They printed all this shit. This is an authority. Had Nietzsche been around today, he'd have been a YouTuber.
Oh, I'm sure.
And had a whole bunch of videos and shit.
I'm sure.
There's a lot of guys that would have been just like that. He would have been lost in the fucking...
Yeah.
You know, he was good, but for his time.
Yeah.
And I do agree with his concept of the will. It's kind of like the force or yin and yang. Yeah. He describes it real well, and that's kind of like with some of the weird paranormal shit that's happened to me. I'd say, yeah, that's what it is. It's the will. And the will is not willpower. The will is more like the life energy behind the universe. The force, basically what they're talking about.
Allison says, never wear your glasses while covering up a crime. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. Then Allison says, 2 dudes kill for Nietzsche and 2 girls for Slender Man. Yeah. Did we do a show about the Slender Man girls?
Oh, yeah.
I think we did, actually.
That's why he remembered it.
Yeah. But yeah, for sure. All right. So, as an example of what I'm talking about, like I said, these are teenage boys, with all that implies. They had letters. Like I said, they still have letters between the two of them from this era. And in one of the letters, Leopold wrote to Loeb, and this is a quote, "A Superman is, on account of certain superior qualities inherent in him," me, superior, I'm superior, exempted from the ordinary laws which govern men, he is not liable for anything he may do. He actually did think that because they were smarter than everyone else, which they were, then that meant they could do whatever they wanted and no one could do anything to them.
He's saying that he's the Ubermensch. He's not.
Right.
The Ubermenschen were the next step in human evolution. They weren't.
Like I said, they misunderstood.
They're not talking about
it.
humans.
They were really smart, but they're not as smart as they thought they were.
Yeah.
I mean, by a lot.
He thought of God.
I'm not saying they were dumb. They weren't. They were very smart.
This
but
is Nietzsche's fucking German, okay? And he's talking about a godlike future type humans. What he's talking about is kind of like the German superheroes of yore. You know, he's talking about Siegfried. That's what he's talking about, like a futuristic Siegfried. You know, Captain America, basically.
Yeah, that kind of shit.
That kind of shit, a superhero.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because they were so superior to all the rest of us peons, and they thought they could just do whatever they wanted, they decided, well, we're just gonna start committing some crimes. But they started with like some kind of like bullshit petty stuff. You know what I mean? Like vandalism, breaking into places, shit like that. You know, it's still not good, but just kind of bullshit crimes, like I said. One of the crimes that they did, they drove all the way from Chicago to the University of Michigan, where both of them had gone to. And I guess they broke in, like, it was, I guess it was Loeb's, was it Loeb's old frat? I think, and they broke into the frat house. And all of the brothers were still sleeping, and I guess they didn't wake up. And they just took a bunch of bullshit. They took, like, a camera, they took some pen knives, and they also stole a typewriter, which would be significant because they would use that later to write the ransom note for the kid that they murdered. So they did all that, and then apparently while they were driving back, I think it was like a 2 or 3 hour drive or something, and when they were driving back from that, they were arguing about how they didn't commit the crime right or whatever, and they were like having some big fight about it. So they decided, well, we need to up the game a little bit. So then they started doing shit like arson. So they started like burning shit down. They were super mad though when no one really noticed their shit. Like, I guess they did some arson and people just thought it was an accident. So like they were keep like looking in the papers to see where's our arson, and it wasn't in there. Yeah. And they were getting like really disappointed because they thought they were
gonna be like the Green Goblin.
They thought they were like
supervillains.
Yeah, they thought they were like supervillains. I was like,
didn't even notice it.
I was like, that's adorable. I was like breaking into a frat and stealing a typewriter, and then like setting some abandoned warehouse on fire or whatever the fuck, and then you're like all excited because you think it's gonna be in the paper, like you're gonna be like a master criminal or something.
Master criminal. Like, somebody stole a typewriter and
that's
burned
darling.
something down.
That's darling.
Yeah,
Teenage
super.
boys.
There's super criminals on the fucking.
You guys are really Ubermenschen. That's what I'm saying. So yeah. So they're really butthurt by the fact that nobody noticed what they were doing. So they decided, well, we really have to like up the ante at this point. So we're going to commit the perfect crime. This big, like, sensational perfect crime that no one can ignore it. And this is going to be, everyone's going to recognize that we are superior beings, I guess.
We're superheroes.
They were actually thinking this, apparently. So what they decided to do, for whatever reason, they decided that the perfect crime was going to be kidnapping and murdering a child or a younger teenager, like a younger kid than them. I don't know why they chose that specifically. It seems a little random. But that's what they did.
There's a sexual attraction thing involved.
I guess, even though...
I already see how this is going to go.
Well, it's... well, I don't want to get too much into that because it'll be... I'll talk about it later.
All right.
Because that wasn't really... It's not going the way you think it's going to go, is what I'm saying.
No, I was just talking about on a psychological level.
Yeah.
These are two dudes. They're in a relationship. They're going to go after a younger kid. Okay. And this is going to bond them closer to each other. You know what I mean? Basically, it's a perverse version of a homosexual threesome. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what I think it is. And they're going to sacrifice the youngest one.
Yeah.
To make a stronger relationship. That's kind of what they're doing, I think. That's just the way I'm foreseeing how it would go. But maybe I'm wrong.
Allison says these two were a hot mess.
Yeah.
They really were.
Basically what this is this a veiled way of saying, let's have a threesome with this younger guy. We'll kill him.
It wasn't even a guy. It was a kid.
It was a kid?
It was a kid.
Well, wasn't it a dude? A male?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. The guy. We're going to have a fucking threesome with this younger guy, and we're gonna kill him, and we'll be closer. That's what it is.
Maybe. I'm not really sure they put that much thought into it, but that might have been what was going on, like, under.
On
But
the
I
deeper
don't
level.
think they were smart enough to be that introspective.
That's probably what it was.
At least emotionally.
Yeah.
They seem to me very much like dudes that were, like, really, really smart, intellectually, but emotionally stupid.
Yeah, well, a lot of people's motives are not, even intelligent people, their motives are not highfalutin
No.
or sophisticated. Most of their motives are in the gutter. Getting more money, having better access to sex, having more power over other people. That's the main ones. Because this yields more security, too. So, very basic. So that's just the way I see it. Let's get a younger dude. It'll be kind of like a threesome. We'll kill him and we'll be closer. We'll be bonded together. Kind of like bonding, probably.
But like I said, we're not that far into
Okay.
it, so we're gonna get farther into it. So as I said, what they decided to do was kidnapping and murder. So they spent quite a long time planning this, which you wouldn't know from how it played out, but they did spend a long time planning it. So some say 7 months. I think that later when they got caught, they said 10 months, whatever. They had everything planned out, like how they were gonna do. Now the thing about it is that they were like, we're going to kidnap the kid and we're going to ask for a ransom, even though they had no intention of keeping the kid alive. They were going to kill the kid. They were going to ask for ransom to throw the police off the scent, because obviously they didn't need the money. They were both, like, rich as fuck, right?
Yeah.
They were just going to do that to throw the police off. That was the only reason. So that was one, like I said, that just seems so weird, like a weird thing to do, like, for your perfect crime. Okay, whatever, you're just adding more moving parts to a crime that, because look, the perfect crime, if it exists, we wouldn't know it existed because we wouldn't have caught the person, or we wouldn't have known that there was even a crime committed in the first place. If you got caught, then by definition that is not a perfect crime because you got caught. Like I said, the only perfect crime is the kind we don't even know
Read
about.
what Zach says. Zach said it was fucking funny.
Where?
He said,
That implies a homo threesome isn't already perverse. I mean, I wouldn't call it perverse necessarily, but you know what I mean.
Zach up at the bathhouse
Yeah.
with 2 other dudes. Yeah.
Getting chlamydia
Yeah,
or whatever
well,
you got.
Like I said earlier, you know what I mean? Fucking, if you know gay dudes and the fucking dudes are honest with you, they're going to say the gay dudes are fucking nuts, man, because there aren't any women involved to tell them not to do something. No, now we're not going to do that.
Not like
So,
dudes
there's
listen
no
to women
media-
not to do stuff anyway.
Yeah, there's no mediation.
Why do we
All
have to
that
be
damn-
responsible for keeping them in line anyway?
all that
Keep your own damn selves in
testosterone.
line.
All that damn testosterone. There's no women around to tell them not to do something.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they don't listen to women anyways. But yeah. So yeah. So they didn't need the money, but they were going to do the whole thing just to make it more confusing, I guess. And they even had this whole plan because they're like, well, that was one of the things that we spent the longest time, like, figuring out was, well, how are we going to have the family of the victim, like, deliver the money? So they came up with this super convoluted plan where they're just kind of like, okay, well, we're going to send them a letter and then we're going to call them at this like phone booth at this drugstore, and then we're gonna leave a note on a train, and then the person has to get on the train with the money, and then they have to throw the money out the train window, like in a box, like at this specific place, and then they're gonna be there to pick it up in the street, like all this fucking shit. They like did rehearsals and everything. They were like really committed to this, you know what I mean? So they actually wrote the ransom note ahead of time on the typewriter that they had stolen from the frat house. And they actually got the idea, or the template, I guess, for the ransom note from one of the True Detective magazines that Loeb loved so much, because they were like, well, what are we going to say in there? So they used that as like a idea, you know what I mean? Then they also went to a store and bought a chisel. They were going to use the chisel not as a murder weapon. They were going to use the chisel to knock the victim unconscious. A chisel? Why? I don't really understand that. And the weird thing about it is they bought the chisel. I don't know how big this chisel was. They bought the chisel and then they modified it by putting tape around the blade part.
Yeah.
So it was like a club.
Yeah.
Because I guess it had like a big handle.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, what? And
Dan Cummins like to head forward weight.
Dan Cummins on Time Sucks said this too. It's like, why don't you just buy a hammer? I mean,
well, a hammer would kill you probably. They're trying to knock the person out, right?
Well, yeah, but it's just, well, the dumb thing is like they're gonna kill the person. So it's just kind of like, so what their original plan was they were gonna knock the person out, and then because they couldn't decide who was gonna actually kill the person, who they hadn't decided who the person was gonna be, it was just gonna be a random person. They bought some rope, and they were gonna put the rope around the victim's neck, and each of them was gonna pull one end of it. So like both of them would have killed the person, right? That's, spoiler alert, that's not what ended up happening. But that was the plan. But I just thought the chisel thing was so weird, and that was another one of the things that helped get them caught. Not the only thing, because they fucked up so much stuff. But it just seems so fucking random that they decided a chisel, but a modified chisel.
This shit sounds
like, why not just buy a bat or a hammer or something?
Because I'm gonna tell you why. This shit sounds too fetishy.
They're overthinking
this
shit
is
too,
fetish.
which smart people do.
This is fetishy, kinky shit. That's why it's coming off as fucking impractical. It's gotta be.
It's just I'm sure they had their reasons, but it just seems like random.
Get a man that, I'll get you another drink.
It just seems like random.
Yeah, it just sounds like they're being kinky.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it just seemed really dumb. Like, why don't they just buy? If they're gonna use the chisel as a club, why don't you just buy a club or like a bat or a hammer or something like that? It just seemed. I'm not trying to like. I'm not giving notes about how to do like a good murder and stuff like that. I'm just saying it just seemed like really weird. Like, what a weird. You wouldn't really think of a chisel to like knock somebody out with. That's what I'm saying. It just, like I said, it could be a fetish thing. It could be that they were too smart for their own good and were overthinking everything, which I think was another aspect. But yeah. So another thing they thought of was that Leopold, they were going to use his car at first. But then they thought, well, his car was like too distinctive. It was a red. It's called a Willys Knight. They only made them like up until the 1930s. So, because I had never heard of that car before. I'm like, what the fuck is that? They only made them for like 10, 15 years, something like that. And I think they only made them up until 1933. But yeah, he had a very distinctive car. It was red. And so they said, okay, well then we'll rent a car. So another layer of shit where you could get caught. Because, okay, one, if you're gonna kill somebody, don't kill them in a rental car, okay? Because you have to turn that back in. It's not great to kill anybody in a car anyway, but you know what I mean. I don't think they initially planned to kill the person in the car, but that's what ended up happening. So what they did was they said, okay, we got to rent a car. So the first thing that they did was they go to this hotel. I can't remember what the name of the hotel was, in Chicago. And they rented a room there under a pseudonym, which was Morton D. Ballard, which you could apparently do back then. Like I said, the 1920s, you could just get away with it. They didn't have no fucking ID or nothing. You could just go in a hotel and be like, hey, I would like to rent a room under, Aloysius B. Fartknocker. And they'd be like, yeah, fine. They don't even need to see an ID or nothing. They're just like, okay, sir. Okay, Mr. Fartknocker, go to your room. You know what I mean? It was like that. So what they did was they go in this hotel, they get a room, and they had a suitcase that was just like full of books and shit. And they put it up in the room, and they said, well, I'm only going to be staying here for a day or something like that, but can I have my mail delivered here and all this other. They were just trying to establish like an address, I guess, like under this name. So then they go to rent this car, which I think was the same car as Leopold's, was a Willys Knight, but I think it was a different color. Like it was a more sedate color. I think it was green or something like that. So when they get to the rental place, apparently the rental place, which, holy shit, this is a lot more. When I say you could get away with a lot more stuff in the 20s, I guess at a rental car place you couldn't, because they needed 3 references. So they were like, we just moved into town, and I can just have 1 reference. And then basically he just called. He had this phone number that was just like a phone booth, and then he had like the other dude, like Loeb or whoever, like answer it. So they're like, okay, that's fine. You seem white and rich. It's fine. So yeah. So they rented a car. I mean, again, dumb, rookie mistake. So now they have like a hotel room with an address and a car under this same name, Morton Ballard. So then what they decide to do, they hadn't decided on a victim in advance or even like who or what the victim was going to be. It was just going to be like a random person. That was like the least. They thought about it a lot, but they didn't really have any they didn't seem to have any preference for like who the victim was going to be. They were just going to pick somebody at random. Like they had talked about some of their relatives. They even talked about like one of their dads, maybe, or like this little girl that lived in the neighborhood, or just like lots of people that they talked about. Like they said that was their favorite part of talking about it, was deciding who the victim was going to be. But until the day that they did it, they didn't have any idea. And actually, a couple people have said that they were actually the first intended target, but, you know, it's like, oh, I had a dentist appointment that day, so they didn't get me, or something like that. So I don't know if that's true. So May 21st, 1924, Leopold and Loeb are driving this rental car very slowly, looking for a victim around south side of Chicago, kind of around where the Harvard School for Boys was, because they wanted a kid, you know what I mean? So they're looking for victims, and it's like they're driving around, and they can't really see any good candidates, you know what I mean? So they're just kind of like, well, what are we going to do? So it's about 5 o'clock, and they had been driving around for like 2 hours, and they're just like, man, fuck it. We'll do this some other day. We can't really find anybody that's any good. But then Leopold is starting to kind of drive back toward home, and then he sees his second cousin and also his neighbor, who is a 14-year-old kid named Bobby Franks. And he's kind of walking down the opposite side of the road. He was coming home from school. It was after school, but he had been like umpiring a baseball game. So he was walking home. And he lived across the street from them, from Loeb. And he also came over to play tennis at Loeb's house sometimes, because they were both real into tennis. So they knew this kid, kind of. I mean, Loeb did. Leopold didn't know him. But so they pull over, and it's very easy to be like, hey, Bobby, what's going on? Get in the car. Like, we'll give you a ride home. Now, Bobby at first is like, nah, it's only like it was like 2 blocks or something like that. He's like, no, I'm almost home. It's okay. But then Loeb says, no, get in, because I wanted to ask you about that tennis racket that you had yesterday at the game, because I want to get my little brother one. And so Bobby, at this point, he didn't know Leopold, because Loeb was like, hey, Nathan, like, Nate or whatever they called him. And he's like, no, I don't know him. He's like, yeah, this is my friend or whatever. And he's like, yeah, get in the car. We'll drive you around the block. I want to talk to you about that tennis racket. So, of course, this kid, he knows him, right? That's his second cousin. So he doesn't really have any reason to distrust him,
It's
right?
a second cousin, then.
Yeah, and his neighbor. Like I said, he lived right across the street. And he would come over to his house and play tennis all the time.
It's a trip, so it wasn't even a stranger.
No, but like I said, they didn't know. It was an opportunity thing. Right. They had discussed like lots of different. They're like, hey, maybe my dad, or maybe that random chick, or whatever. So they didn't really have a plan as to who they were going to kill. Man, it was just anybody.
This is a weird, kind of like a threesome type situation where they're going to fucking kill somebody and it's going to bond them together. That's what this is.
Eric?
It's kind of like getting married. Yeah. On a psychological level. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think it is.
That happens with a lot of these killer couple type situations.
Yeah, this is relationship stuff.
These two were like such sociopaths, though.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if it was still applicable.
Well, I think that's how a sociopath would do it.
Well, I guess so, but yeah.
They can't bond together normally, so they're going to use this murder to do it. And it's kind of like it's sexualized kind. It's kind of like but they're probably not. They probably don't have sex with a kid. There's probably no sexual attraction, but there's a sexual attraction for each other, and this is just like some weird ritual to get married, basically.
Yeah.
Like an evil marriage.
Eric is laughing. She says, Jenny's like amateurs, LOL. Yeah. Said, I think the same thing watching true crime and watching dumb people. Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to give like criminals tips or anything like that, but it's like, Jesus Christ. Nowadays, anybody that watches true crime would be like, holy crap, like rookie mistake. These two were complete dipshits.
Most crimes are done on impulse. They're not planned. So they're just look, they're easy to figure out who did it. And then a lot of the ones where the guys planned it, they're stupid.
Well, because one, plan,
So you
it's
catch
good to
them.
have a plan,
Yeah.
and it's good to have like backup plans and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, plans never go the way you think they're going to go. For
No.
one thing, like there's all kind of factors that you can't foresee. So there's that. So you always have to have like contingency plans and various things. But the thing about it is like I said, I'm not trying to give anybody tips or anything like that. But if you're going to commit a fucking murder, one, don't get a rental car for one thing. Don't kill somebody that is your fucking neighbor who you know. That's dumb.
Look, the good dudes that get away with it are serial killers who kill victims that they're not associated
That
with.
there's no
They don't know who
connection
that
at
is.
all. Like I said, why do you
Right.
think so many of and we were talking about this at Mellow Mushroom the other day because I was telling him about the book I was reading about this, and I was just kind of like, why do you think so many like the uncaught serial killers are like they suspect they're like
Yeah.
truck drivers and stuff because they drive all over the country, they just pick up women like
Yeah.
sex workers at various rest stops and then like dump them several states away
Yeah.
and there's no connection.
Other dudes that kill a lot of people and get away with it are kind of like my buddy Tim Van Vacchius. All right, we were in the Army together. He ended up running a damn South and Central American death squad. You can look up his name. All right, they killed probably hundreds. The reason why they got away with it is they had state backing.
Well, that's not quite the same thing.
Yeah. They had state backing. The states that hired, governments would hire them to get rid of political enemies. They were wearing uniforms, police uniforms. They had police equipment. All right. And they were all ex-soldiers and ex-cops, so they understand the investigative techniques. Other guys that get away with it are private detectives, bad private detectives who are ex-cops.
I'm gonna go pee.
They have important clients. They'll take somebody out to keep them from testifying, and they make it look like a fucking random street crime. And because their boss, or the person that hired them, is already in office somewhere, they make sure that the police investigation doesn't go very far. So there's never any kind of indictment on anybody. So having state backing has a lot to do with it. But look up Timothy Van Vacchius. I got pictures of me and Tim in the Army together up in Korea, and he ended up when he got out forming a band of international mercenaries, guys from Poland and Russia, and I think there was a German guy with him, and I think there might have been a couple of Central American ex-soldier guys with him, and they would go to work for Central and South American politicians, and they must have killed hundreds. And they just pull up at your door in a cop car with a warrant for your arrest. You'd go with them. And the cop car was a real cop car, but they weren't cops. And they'd take you out to a pre-planned place where the hole was dug and everything, and they'd pop you in the back of the head, throw you in the hole, and bury you up. You were never found. And they'd move on to another client in another country. They were kind of working a route. They were going to make a movie about Tim. But he's in prison right now for attempting to kill a DEA agent. I don't know the details, but he'll be out in a few years. He didn't get that much time for that. He wasn't wanted for any of the other stuff.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Let's see. So where was I? Okay.
Yeah.
So Bobby Franks gets in the car. Like I said, doesn't really have any reason not to. Doesn't suspect anything. Now, no one's entirely sure what happened at this point. Well, they know pretty much what happened, but who did what is unclear because they both blamed each other. So almost as soon as the kid gets in the car, like they didn't even wait. And this is like broad daylight, y'all. This is like 5:30 in the afternoon. So it's not like it's nighttime. It's in public, right? Again, stupid. So the kid gets in the car. Probably Leopold was driving. Maybe. Like, that's pretty much what most people think, but no one's entirely sure. And Loeb was probably sitting in the back seat and probably had the chisel with the tape on it. And as soon as the kid gets in the car, Loeb, like, kind of reaches across the back seat, grabs the kid from behind with his hand, and then puts his hand over the kid's mouth to keep him from screaming. And then he takes the chisel, the handle end, because he's got the taped blade end, like, in his hand, right? Like I said, they're using it as a club for some unfathomable reason. And he smashes the handle into the base of Bobby's skull. Now, he does this a couple of times, but he seems surprised because, I guess, in all of his little true crime stories, magazines, people just get hit and die immediately. Like I said, you see it in the movies all the time. Somebody gets stabbed one time in the back and they fall over dead. That's not how it works. Like I said, we saw a true crime show last night where a woman was literally shot 8 times with an AK and lived. And actually before that, there was a woman who was shot twice in the face and once right in the heart, and she also survived.
Yeah, with a 9mm.
And she was fine. I mean, she was blind in one eye.
Looking at her, you never know.
But you would never, ever know that she had been... She said she had a lot of scars, but they didn't show them.
She said she had bullet holes in her back.
And she had a bullet hole in her back, too. But she was absolutely... If you didn't see any scars or anything, you would absolutely never know that had happened to her, which is amazing. And the same with the girl with the AK. I was just kind of like... you would never know that she'd been shot 8 times with an AK-47. Holy shit. But yeah, so... You think that, like, just hitting a kid once or twice in the back of the skull with a big chisel, I guess he thought that was going to knock the kid out immediately. It did not. The kid was still conscious. The kid was still thrashing around and yelling and stuff like that. And at this point, the kid had kind of turned in the seat, like with his hands up like that, like, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. Kind of shit, as you would. And so at this point, Loeb takes the chisel and basically smashes it into the kid's forehead 2 more times. And he left like a big, huge hole. The kid, though, was still alive. And at this point, blood is getting everywhere. All over the rental car and also all over their clothes. So, you know, like I said, stupid. Why would you kill somebody in a rental car?
They're dumb.
In broad daylight.
Especially
They're just driving down the fucking street.
Especially in a way that leaves forensic evidence.
I mean, yeah, this was the 1920s. They didn't have, like, forensic evidence stuff, but even then,
Back then you could see blood.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many other ways.
That's what I mean. Like I said, if you're going to do... I'm not giving anybody recommendations. I'm just saying this was a stupid, stupid way to go about it. So at this point, Loeb is kind of freaking out a little bit, I would imagine, because he's just kind of like, I thought the kid would be unconscious by now because he's hit him like 4 times and his skull's all busted up and he's bleeding everywhere. So basically what he did was he reached into the front, because he was in the back seat, and he reached into the front seat and pulls the kid into the back seat, and then he shoves a rag down the kid's throat and then puts tape over his mouth.
Tries to suffocate
So
him.
he suffocated him, is what he did. And that actually did kill him eventually. So after he...
Fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Way to go.
That's what I mean. It's like the kid was conscious the whole time and knew what was going on.
Yeah,
I can't imagine how fucking horrifying that would have been.
Yeah. Well, these dudes were fucking... These assholes were fantasizing it about this, and they kind of had a fantasy version of what it's like to kill somebody. That's the same thing with these dudes with these knives.
Yeah.
Okay? They have the fantasy way of the way they think it's going to go down. When you hear all this shit, because, you know, this woman stabbed 39 times, you know, it's because they say, well, why would he? That's overkill. No, you're jumping to the same conclusion as that murderer did. He thought you stabbed somebody once and they die.
Because that's how it is in the movie.
That's not how it goes. It takes 39 times to fucking kill him.
Depending on where you stab them,
just, you know, it's
just stabbing like that one time. That person is probably
knives are horrible fucking weapons. They're not very effective. They don't have what you would call stopping power. All right, there's no trauma. They're too surgical.
If you're really trying to murder somebody and not get caught, I mean, they make a massive, huge mess. You have to get like right up close, and it's just kind of like you're gonna get caught, bro.
But there's something sexy about them, and these guys are fetishizing these murders.
Well, that's what it is.
And
they want to get up close and personal.
But that knife look has a sexy, powerful look to it. They think
it's phallic,
and it's kind of
it's penetrating.
Right? Yeah, but that's and they've been around for a long time, and they're scary looking, so they must be effective. They don't have a lot of stopping power. What has more stopping power is a fucking police baton. That little collapsible police baton?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why they carry those.
The reason why, if you strike somebody in the head with that, it kills them.
Yeah.
That's why cops don't aim for the head. They're aiming for elbows and knees and shoulders and shit.
Yeah, they just want you to kind of like be down on the ground so they can subdue you.
Yeah.
They don't want to kill you necessarily.
Right. My stepbrother was a fucking like high-level taekwondo fucking master when he was a teenager. And he said the best weapon out of them all was just a damn bow stick, a staff, or Joe sticks, 2 little 3-foot long sticks that were, and because those are blunt force trauma weapons. A single blow to the head and you're unconscious, basically.
Yeah.
The knife won't do that. It'll just cut you up and you'll be alive and fighting and spreading blood around.
Yeah, like I said, people have to be, because most of the time, unless you stab them in a super vital organ, most people are just stabbing, because they're struggling, obviously, so they're just going to stab you in the arm or the side or something. Like, that's not... Yeah, you're going to bleed a lot, and eventually you'll get tired, but it's just kind of like, you're not... and the adrenaline's rushing, too. Yeah. So people are going to fight back against you, because that's not going to kill you.
One of our listeners here, I think he's listening right now, Xanada, he sent me a video of something that came from that war in between Russia and Ukraine. And a soldier fucking creeps up on an enemy soldier. You can see a thermal image of him taken from a drone. And he runs up behind the enemy soldier and puts his arm underneath his chin, pulls him backwards and snaps his neck and kills him in a single move. And I said, yeah, that's just a standard sentry removal technique. He's like, wait a minute, hold on. That's standard? And I said, yeah, that's the standard move. And he was just blowing his mind. Without any tools at all, a trained person can, if you know what you're doing, and a lot of it's situational, can basically pull a man's head or skull off of his spinal column, and it never even fucking, not a drop of blood. You just have to know about leverage.
I heard about a woman surviving.
It's instant. Normally, it's instant death.
Surviving her
head being torn.
Yeah, it's like it happens like internal.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Like internal decapitation.
Yeah.
But she lived though.
But she was paralyzed from the neck down. I'm sure.
I don't think she was completely paralyzed.
Okay.
I just read it like not too long ago, but I don't remember all the details. Because I was reading about it, I was just like kind of horrified. I was just like, oh my god, I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah, in the thermal image, it shows it. The dude does it fast. He just fucking runs up. He's running without any weapon. He puts his weapon down. He's crawled up to the guy. The guy was about 10 feet away. He fucking puts his fucking AK to the side, stands up, and he's looking at the guy. You see he's looking at his back, and the guy's taking a piss. And he runs up behind him, and bam, and pops his head off his neck and throws him. Now, the other shit happened. His team came through, and they shot up a bunch of guys. And later on, in the full video of that, you see that dude still laying there. He's dead. Dead. And that's a standard move in infantry. You learn that.
I mean, I find it more believable in movies where somebody just grabs somebody around their neck and snaps their neck, because I know that you can actually do that.
Yeah.
Other than when you see some movies where somebody stabs a person one time and the person just drops it, I'm like, that's not how that works.
It's a headlock. You put your hand underneath the person's chin and in their neck. You pull them backwards, and you have your other hand on the top of the crown of their head, and you push the head forward as you're walking backwards with them, and you're using your forearm as a fulcrum against the chin, and you pop the skull off of the spinal column.
Like I said, that's internal decapitation.
Yeah.
You can survive
Usually
that.
it kills them immediately.
But it's not... It's rare to survive it. But I was reading an article the other day about a woman that
usually what happens is, that, like you said, you internally decapitated them, the heart stops beating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or it'll beat for a while, but it's disconnected from the brain. And I don't think that person can regain consciousness. They might be conscious for a while.
Yikes.
But their blood pressure is going to start declining because the heart's going to stop beating. They'll die.
I mean...
Yeah. And they can't speak, evidently.
Yeah. So yeah. So at this point, Bobby Franks is dead in this rental car, and
Yeah,
is
Xana's
laying.
here. Yeah, he sent me that
Yeah.
video, Xana. Yeah, he goes like, man, that's a fucking cut. That was a standard move. He says, yeah, that's basic training.
And is laying on the floor of the car, like in the back seat. And at this point, they decide, okay, well, he's dead now, so we're gonna drive to our predetermined spot. Because like I said, they planned this. You wouldn't know it, but they planned this where they were gonna dump the body. They had picked the perfect spot, which again was a huge fuck up, but we'll see that in a minute. So they were gonna actually drive 25 miles to Hammond, Indiana, and they were gonna dump it near Wolf Lake. On the way out of town, while they were driving to the spot where they were going to dump the 14-year-old body, they stopped at a little roadside stand called the Dewdrop Inn for some hot dogs and root beer with a dead body in the car. So that's nice. So, yeah, because they said that they weren't going to get rid of the body, dispose of the body until after nightfall, because it was still, again, broad daylight. Idiots. Fucking idiots. So, yeah. Ubermensch, y'all. So yeah, so after it gets dark, they've had their little hot dogs and root beer. They have a dead body in their fucking rental car. This is just, I know it's fucked up, but it's still like kind of hilarious to me, just in a Blackley comic sort of way. So they get to the spot where they have determined that they're gonna dump the body, the perfect spot. So they take off all the kids' clothes, and they stuff the body in a culvert, which this culvert, one, it's not really that far off the highway. Two, it's not really that far from the railroad. So it's not like they went out in the middle of nowhere, like in the woods or something, and dumped the body. No, they stuffed it in a culvert in a place that was kind of in the middle of everything. Like, not that far from the road and not that far from a railroad. So, you know what I mean. Another thing they did, just to be extra, was they had bought some hydrochloric acid at the same time that they bought the inexplicable chisel and the rope. They took the hydrochloric acid and poured it on the kid's face. And they also poured it on the kid's genitals because the kid was Jewish, and at this time, circumcision was not common for, non-Jewish people. So they wanted to
hide the fact that he was Jewish.
Yeah, hide the fact that he was Jewish and hide his identity. That's what they thought. Anyway, yeah. Spoiler alert, that's not how that worked out. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. But so, yeah. So they poured acid on him, too. So that's nice. So then they drove back to Chicago. You missed the part where I said they stopped for hot dogs and root beer with the body in the car. Like,
where was it?
At a little roadside. No, in the back seat on the floor.
Nobody noticed it.
No.
They covered it up?
I don't know.
Weird. Okay.
But it's just laying there. I'm not real familiar with how the car.
Right.
It's a Willie's Night. That's the name of the car.
I don't know that.
Which they only made up until the early 1930s.
Yeah.
So they're driving back to Chicago. By the time they get back, like I said, it's about a 25 miles. Obviously, Bobby Franks' parents already had noticed that the kid had not come home and were freaking out, understandably. And had called the cops and everything like that because it's like, he should have been home like hours ago. Now, at this point, Leopold calls up Franks' mother, who I think's name was Flora. He said that his name was George Johnson. And basically says, your son has been kidnapped, and we're going to be sending you instructions on how to give us the ransom. Yeah, and the kid's already dead, obviously, but the parents don't know this. So they mail the ransom letter that had the first, level of instructions in it. So they mail that, and then they go to one of their houses and burn Bobby's clothes in the furnace and burn their own clothes, which had blood on them. And then they started trying to clean the blood out of the rental car, which they weren't entirely successful at. And I love this. Their chauffeur comes into the garage and is like, what are you guys doing? Their excuse was, oh, we spilled a bunch of red wine in the car. The chauffeur thought it was a little bit weird because he'd never seen Leopold doing any manual labor ever in his life, and he didn't understand why he hadn't just asked one of these servants to clean the car.
Yeah.
So he thought it was a little weird.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny. By all accounts, they didn't really clean the car all that well, but I guess they were just kind of like, good enough. We're Ubermensch. No one's going to catch us.
They'll never know.
They'll never know. Like I said, not master criminals. Come on now. Like, even killing somebody in a rental car, killing somebody in a car, period, that is a stupid, stupid move. Stupid.
Yeah, because you're carrying the crime scene with you now.
Yeah, and you can't ever, ever get all of that blood and brain matter and all that kind of shit. You can't get that shit out of the upholstery. And it gets all under the fucking... Like, I'm talking like I know.
Yeah.
But it's, I'm just saying, like, from everything that I've read, it gets, like, underneath all these little nooks and crannies. You're never going to get that shit out of there. And then you got to turn it back in because it's not yours. So, Jesus Christ. It's stupid. So, the Franks family gets the ransom note in the mail the next morning. And at this point, Leopold calls again and gave them, like, the first set of instructions for how they were supposed to pay the ransom. Now, the plan fucked up almost immediately because Leopold, speaking as George Johnson, was talking so fast because he was trying to get off the phone as quickly as possible that the relative who took the information couldn't write it all down fast enough before the dude hung up. So when the time came to go to this, it was like a drugstore. He was supposed to go to this drugstore and there was a payphone and he was supposed to pick up the payphone at a particular time or whatever. And he couldn't remember the address of the payphone, when it was time to go and do that, of the drugstore. So, and all of this planning didn't really matter because the kid's body was found less than 24 hours after the murder. As I said, they put it in this culvert, the perfect spot to dump a body. No, they were expecting that the acid would do its work, that they wouldn't identify them, that no one would find it for weeks and weeks, and that when they did find it, no one would identify it. Guess what? The next morning, a dude was walking by there, to work or something like that, and saw a pair of feet sticking out of the culvert. And was like, what the fuck is that? And goes over and looks and sees a kid's naked body in there. And so there's, a bunch of, other, railroad workers or something. And he's like, you guys, what the fuck? So they called the cops, and they pull the body out. And despite all of the acid and stuff, they're like, that's Bobby Franks right there.
They knew who that was.
They knew immediately
who
it was. I mean, they weren't entirely sure. But they knew that the kid had been reported missing, the night before. They said, this must be him, because...
Still tell it's a young guy.
Right. And they're like, because it didn't happen in this area all that much. They're like, this must be who this is. So this is kind of hilarious, because Leopold and Loeb, for a while, didn't realize that the body had been found, and they were still doing the ransom shit like that was going to do anything. I believe that they found out by passing a newspaper and seeing on the front page that the body had been found. The body of Bobby Franks had been found. So again, idiots. So at this point, they kind of know, okay, well, fuck it. We're made. You know what I mean? Although I think at this point they were still kind of cocky and they thought they weren't going to get caught. So they took the typewriter that had been used to write the ransom notes, and they kind of twisted some of the keys or pulled some of the keys out or something like that and dumped it in some fucking swamp or something. And then there was a blanket that they had in the car that had blood on it, and they burned that too. And then they just went around acting totally cash, like everything was fine. So at this point, obviously, the cops start this huge investigation, because this is a 14-year-old, very wealthy child who has been murdered horribly. And so they got to get to the bottom of this. And Leopold and Loeb, again, idiots, they were just super excited about it. They just couldn't wait to talk to people about it. What do you guys think about that murder? Isn't that, you know what I mean? Yeah. So they weren't being real slick about it, is what I'm saying. Leopold, matter of fact, even talked to one of his professors and a girl that he knew. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna confess to the crime, and then I'll give you the reward money, because it was a big reward and shit like that. So he's saying dumb shit like that. Loeb actually was super, and this happens a lot with a lot of killers, where they want to get super involved because they want to know what's going on with the cops, and also I think they kind of low key want the admiration that they did the shit, like the, just the recognition. So Loeb knew a couple of reporters and stuff, and so he decides he's going to get super involved in the investigation too. He's like, you want me to show you like where the drugstore is, where they were going to send that guy, and all this other shit. And then one of the reporters like asked him about Bobby because he knew that he knew him because he lived across the street. And this was the quote that he gave to the reporter, Loeb. "If I were to murder anybody, it would be just such a cocky little son of a bitch as Bobby Franks," he says to a reporter. Ubermensch.
Yeah.
So, also, and this is what Allison was referring to earlier, the cops also found near Bobby Franks' body in the culvert a pair of eyeglasses. Now, at first, they thought that the glasses belonged to the kid, to the victim, and they kind of put him on him, and they had him in the morgue, and then I believe it was Bobby's uncle that came to identify the body, and he's like, why does he have those glasses on? He doesn't wear glasses. So at that point, the police were like, oh, well, these must belong to the killer then. Now, when this was discovered, Leopold and Loeb were just kind of like, oh, well, a zillion people have those glasses. I think that was the words that they used.
A zillion?
A zillion. I think it was, yeah, I think they did say a zillion people have those glasses.
They haven't even come up with zillion. They got Googleplex. When are they going to come up with
zillion? A Googleplex people have those glasses. Yeah. Which...
Zillion, that's a good one.
In the aggregate was true. It was a very common frame. It was a very common prescription. Unfortunately, for these dumbasses, the hinge on the glasses, like obviously this little hinge right here, had only been purchased by 3 customers in Chicago. One of them was an older man who was a businessman and he was away in Europe, so obviously he couldn't have committed the crime. And the other one was kind of an elderly woman. The third one was obviously fucking Leopold. Those were his glasses. So they pick up Leopold. Now at first, like, the cops were kind of like, as would happen in this situation, particularly in this time period. This is a 19-year-old, super intelligent, super wealthy, whole future ahead of him kind of guy. Why would he be mixed up with something like this? They thought it was one of those pores, I guess, that had done this. So they didn't really think that he had done it, but they're like, these glasses, though, bro. I mean, he's like the only person that bought these.
Xanada mentioned something that's important. A lot of these murderers want to be around the case. They want to.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. They want to know what's going on.
And a lot of that is they want to know how close the cops are to catching them. They want to know what the cops know, and they also want to see the reactions on the public's face. They want to see how effective the attack was, basically. Yeah, they're trying to get famous.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to like gauge reactions to their work.
I think there's also though the fear of getting caught, so they want to know how much the cops know.
Yeah, it's very common. Yeah. Well, why do you think like cops will, go undercover at like victims' funerals and like infiltrate?
See if a random person shows up.
Yeah, like if they do, you know how they do like candlelight vigils and stuff like that, they'll infiltrate those and like look for like sus individuals and stuff like that because they know that killers will oftentimes do that kind of shit. And that was for real the case in this one, particularly with Loeb. He just couldn't wait to talk to everybody about it. So yeah, so these glasses, they're like, okay, well these are obviously Leopold's glasses. So they ask him about it, and at first he says, well, I'd say they were mine, but mine are at home. So they go to his house, and he looks for them, and he doesn't find them. And then he's probably like, fuck me, I fucking dropped him. You know what I mean? When he was dumping a body, which that's not a good thing to do. And then, thinking on his feet, he says, oh, well, I come out here to bird watch a lot, and, I was here like this past weekend, and I probably dropped them then. Now, this wasn't a crazy story because he did actually birdwatch in that area a lot, and like a lot of people could vouch for that. In fact, that was one of the reasons that they had chosen that spot to dump the body, because Leopold was really familiar with it. Again, dumb. Any place that has a connection with you, don't dump a body there. Just a pro tip. So I'm just saying.
We're teaching people.
I know. I'm just saying.
No, look, look. The reason why we don't really give a shit is because the dudes that actually do this already know most of them. The guys that are real dangerous.
Yeah.
They already know. That's why they don't get caught. The main ones are the serial killers.
Yeah.
And they pretty much know. They don't know. They never become a serial killer
because they get caught.
You get caught too early. You know, I mean, you have to do at least 3 to become a serial killer. Most serial killers kind of know.
Yeah.
And their behavior, the way they are, they're kind of shy. So, well, most of them depends on what the situation is. Maybe that's a generalization. Some of them aren't shy. Like BTK wasn't shy. He was pissed that nobody caught him.
Yeah, he wanted the attention.
He wanted to fucking he needed the attention.
There's definitely a sub culture of serial killers or a subgroup of serial killers that very much want the attention. And it's like if they're not getting it, it was like look at the Zodiac and shit like that, where he was just like writing letters to everybody. He was claiming shit he didn't even do. You know what I mean? Yeah. Threatening shit he never did.
Shit he would never do.
Right, shit like that.
What he didn't have the ability to do.
Right. Like he did do bad shit, but they want attention. They just want everything to be, they want to be larger than life, I guess. So I kind of feel like it was the same. These 2 idiots weren't serial killers, but they had the same
psychological makeup.
Yeah, the same kind of mindset where they wanted
to be supervillains.
Yeah. And they wanted everyone to recognize how superior they were.
Yeah, and there's something else. This is a truth now, because I've seen a lot of interviews with them. A lot of the ones that get caught on murder 1 and 2, they all want to be seen as a badass. They never want to be seen as weak.
That's why it's always good to like make fun of them.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, you look at them and 99% of them are fucking weaklings. They're just fucking.
Well, that's why
they're trying to
they're
trying to overcompensate the fact that there's nothing to them. You know, very few of them were actually like there was anything to them. Original
if there
Night
was,
Stalker.
they wouldn't have.
The only one there was something to him was Original Night Stalker. What was his name?
Who? D'Angelo.
He's
still a shitbag, though.
Yeah, he's still a shitbag. Fuck that dude. But he was a cop. And fucking, he did some commando-ass shit. But his motives were fucking asshole, you know. Low, you know. When your motive is sex, you're already weak. You know? A strong man doesn't have to kill a woman to get sex.
Well, of course not.
He doesn't get off on it either. He would never get off on that. So
I mean, I would hope that was true of most people, but
it's always a weak man.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of.
It's always a weak man. He's a woman is somehow a threat to him, and and she's got to be punished for being a threat. That type of deal. Yeah. You know, fucking,
you whore, you made me desire.
Yeah, or some shit like you got to be punished for all that whoring you're doing. Just weird shit like that.
They're not even whoring. Even if they were whoring, that's no excuse.
It still doesn't
matter.
People
can whore, it's fine. That's not hurting anybody.
Alpha motherfuckers don't really care what women do as long as they're getting attention. They don't care. You know, but these guys they care. You know, oh my God, you're selling pussy? Shit. You're exploiting men.
Like I said, it's even stuff that doesn't have anything to do with them. It's like women that don't even know them.
That's her pussy. That's not your pussy. Who cares?
That's what I mean. No one asked you.
Yeah, I respect a hooker. You know, as long as she does it the right way.
I do as well, like I said. Yeah, it's a job.
As long as you
I wouldn't want to do it. If they want to do it and that's how they want to make more fucking power to them. Yeah. I wouldn't do it. But, you know, I kind of admire it in a way. Like, in a weird way, because it's just something I wouldn't do.
I was a soldier. Okay, I was a soldier in Korea, infantry soldier. I sold my body to old men, basically, to kill their enemies of old men so he could stay on a pleasure island. It's the same thing a hooker does. She sells her body to old men, basically.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Same thing. But, you know,
like
they're for fucking and we're for fighting.
I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. I went to Korea and, you know.
And I wish more people saw it that way because...
The system used us both up.
Then sex workers wouldn't get shit on as much.
Yeah. The closest analogy, the world's oldest profession is prostitution. The second oldest profession is soldiering. And that started with some dude who's like, I don't have anything. I'll go hunt the buffalo. I'll hunt the mammoth with you. We'll share the meat. That's selling your body to get some meat, to get something. She's joining up with other guys. Same thing. You know, he gets all fucking busted up by the fucking woolly mammoth and shit. It's the same thing. Woman gets busted up by some psycho dude, you know. She's just trying to get some meat. Trying to get food or money.
Yeah.
Same thing.
You're just trying to survive, man.
Trying to survive, right?
With whatever
whatever you working
skill
with.
or assets you have.
Right, and
like I said, I respect anybody trying to make money.
Men can only help out with labor. Women are going to
However
help
they do.
out with some pleasure. That's what they're trying to do. Trade. Now that's the rock bottom. It's not the ideal. Although I look back at my times being a professional, and I was like, it taught me so much. I'm glad that I did it. I would want to do it again. That's the fucking basics. It's very basic. But knowing the basics is good. Very good. But Jen, I already told Jen before, I found it weird that I was being like, I get people today, thank you for your service. They're honoring and shit what I did, even though I was serving an empire that was bad, all right? I'm getting lauded or credit, and they still pay me today for the bad shit that fucking we were kind of doing. And then you got these girls who are just doing nothing more than trying to make dudes happy, and they're shitting on them.
Yeah.
Misogyny,
baby. That's how that works.
They've legalized that shit, which I don't believe. I believe prostitution should be legal and controlled and in a safe environment.
Like I said, if you want to
get it out
do
of the hands of pimps and shit,
more power to you.
Yeah.
If you want to do that,
you've got modern technology
out there. I have no
there.
problem with it whatsoever, and I would not look down on anybody for doing that either.
Just make sure you're safe.
Yeah, that's all. It's very dangerous, but like
Very
I said,
dangerous.
if it was legalized and regulated, it would obviously be much safer.
Right. And
which
what
is
I did
why
was,
I kind of advocate.
And
for
what
that.
I did was dangerous. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's no different. But like I said, it is
close.
kind of shitty that soldiers and stuff get jerked off on, and then women doing sex work, you just get fucked over.
When I was in Korea, of course, I'm doing business with the Korean ladies of the evening, and fucking they were there to keep us away from Korean civilian women, so we didn't bother the family girls, and they're shitting on these girls afterwards.
Yeah.
And they had government backing.
And they were doing a service.
They were doing a
for
service.
the country, technically.
Right. They're trying to get all the money out of our pockets.
But they still got shit on.
They were still shitting on them.
But like I said, it's, it's better than it was, but it's still like a weird, like misogynistic double standard. Yeah. Like, dudes can do shit, like all this shit all day long, but once a woman does it, everybody freaks the fuck out about it.
Yeah. It was, I can understand dudes didn't want to marry them, but it was a difficult situation, you know what I mean?
That's what I mean. And honestly, I'm not a dude, but I don't think I would be bothered.
Yeah, I would. You're going to catch feelings.
No, I'm saying that, like, just hypothetically, like, if you met a woman that had been... Because some dudes, like, won't even go out with a woman that had been a stripper, like, a long time ago, or a sex worker a long time ago, but not anymore.
They got white dudes that will not date a fucking white chick if she's been with a black dude. They got all kinds of fucking weird hang-ups.
That is so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think she has cooties, or what is that about? It's like, that's so dumb.
They don't trust her.
So dumb.
But they don't trust fucking hookers.
People are fucking stupid, man. It just depresses me.
But here's the thing: when you look at this shit, it's mostly dudes in their 20s that are like that.
Yeah.
When guys get
maybe they'll grow out of it.
Guys get a little bit older, and they're like, they kind of understand the real world a little bit better.
Because look, like if I said to you that, and this is not true, this is just a thing, but it's just like, oh, for a year or two back in college, like I had to do sex work to pay my tuition or whatever. I don't think you would be upset about it, like if I wasn't doing it anymore.
I'd be like, wait a minute, hold on, I want to know everything about it first of all.
Well, yeah, you'd be like, ooh, tell me more. I didn't do that. I got grants to pay for college because my ass was poor. So yeah, I didn't even have any loans or anything. But yeah, Erica says the whole cams thing, not technically sex working, looks better and better a job in this economy. Actually, you can't. I'm gonna say, like, we've done it. We're gonna get back into it, but more making videos, I guess, than live streaming, because live streaming is kind of boring, honestly. But there's so many people doing it, I will say, that I would suggest finding a niche and rolling with that, because if you try to just compete with general stuff, it's just like there's so many. It's just you can't really stand out, and you'll make money, but not enough to live on. And it's it's work like anything else. And a lot of it's really boring. A lot of it's just really kind of sitting around, and sometimes people ask you to do weird shit that you don't necessarily want to do, but you have to act like, and I'm not good at doing that, but some people are. So, but if you're good at doing that, because some people are really, really good at it, which, like I said, I kind of admire that. I have a hard time, but I've done it. It's just not my personality. So I can do it, but it's like work. You know what I mean? So yeah. So here's the thing. So again, another tip for any aspiring murderers out there: where you dump the body, don't drop your very, very distinctive eyeglasses, which is what this moron did. And at first they were kind of like, okay, well, he did have an excuse, because like I said, he did birdwatch in that area. People did say, yeah, he's here all the time, he's always out here birdwatch, so it's technically that could happen. So the cops were like, tell you what, we'll take you out to that area, you put the glasses in your pocket, and then you like kind of pretend to fall down or pretend to stumble or something, and we'll see if we can get the glasses to fall out like in the same way. Guess what? He couldn't replicate it. So the police were like, okay, well, that's interesting. So both Leopold and Loeb were brought in for formal questioning on May 29th, which, like I said, was only 8 days after the murder. Super geniuses, you guys. Their story was, and I'm sure they concocted this together at some point, they said, oh, well, at the time the murder occurred, what we were actually doing, we had Leopold's car, his red Willie's Night, and we were driving around doing this, that, and the other thing, and we picked up these two girls and did some shit with them, and then they didn't, I don't think this was the implication, but they were like, well, they didn't want to have sex with us or whatever. So it's like we dropped them off somewhere. We didn't know their last names, conveniently. I mean, this is a lie, obviously. So they're like, yeah, we were out with these girls and we got home really late. Now, interestingly, this kind of story was busted up by Leopold's chauffeur. And I think, I'm not entirely sure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the chauffeur was trying to help them by saying, oh, they couldn't have committed the crime because Leopold's car, the Red Willie Knight, was here in the garage the entire day and night that the crime occurred, because it was kind of bright and like I was working on it, so I know it was here. See, he didn't know, the chauffeur didn't know that they had rented a car to do the murder. So I think he thought that he was helping the boys by saying, oh, they couldn't have done the crime because the car was here the whole day. And the cops were like, well, they said that they were out in that car picking up girls at the time the murder occurred, which is obviously not true. So, and then the chauffeur's wife, like, also backed up the chauffeur saying, yeah, that car was here all fucking day and night. It was being worked on. The chauffeur was working on it in the garage, and it was there. So they obviously couldn't have been driving around with these hypothetical girls, which was their alibi. So, whoops, there was that. Also, the cops found the half-destroyed typewriter. They found it in a lagoon a few days later, like on June 7th. I will also note, and this is probably my favorite thing, is that on the way, I think what happened, like after they murdered the kid and dumped the body, and then Leopold was driving Loeb back home and then driving back to his house, he realized that the chisel, the partial murder weapon, was still in his pocket. So he just throws it out the window of his car at a regular ass intersection. Dumb. Like, why? He just throws it out the window of his car. Like, it wasn't the woods, it wasn't the middle of nowhere, it was just like a regular ass fucking street. He throws it out the window. Oh, well, it's gone. Like, literally seconds later, a passerby sees it and is like, what the fuck is that? Like, he saw him throw it out of the car. And he's like, what the fuck is that? And he picks it up and he's like, why is there a chisel with tape on it? And he's like, oh, there's also dried blood on it. So he took it to the cops, as you would. Stupid. You just throw it out the fucking car in the middle of a fucking intersection. That's my favorite. I love that.
Yeah, what is up with all this?
He just pulls it out of his pocket. Oh, what's that murder weapon still doing there? Whoosh. He just yeets it out the fucking window. What the fuck? Yeah. Dumbass.
Yeah, he's a genius, but he just throwing evidence around like it's nothing.
Like I said, I think they were teenagers in their defense, I guess. And even though they were geniuses in one sense, they were also complete, total morons.
No streetwise, no street sense.
Why did you think that wasn't gonna? I don't know. That kills me that he just threw it out the fucking window. So yeah, they had the two of them in there, and after the police tell them all of the evidence that they have against them, because it's like, you guys left so much fucking evidence. The cops were just like probably laughing over their fucking donuts. So the two of them actually confessed pretty much immediately. Now, Loeb was actually the first one to crack, and both of them gave essentially the same story, only difference being Loeb blamed Leopold for killing the kid, and Leopold blamed Loeb for killing the kid. Which nobody actually knows which one killed him, but it doesn't really matter. But that was the only way that it differed, so the cops were like, well, that must have been what happened, because they separately gave the same story, except they just blamed each other. So yeah. So at this point, it's like the end of May, and the confessions get announced. And they ask them, why? Why did you do this? And both of them said they wanted to commit the perfect crime because they thought they were Supermen. And Leopold said that, well, they said that they didn't say they didn't want to kill somebody. They just said they weren't looking forward to it. But Leopold said that he thought that it would be like this big thing, like he would feel different, like after it had happened. And he was like really bummed out that after they killed the kid, he felt the same as before. Which, yikes. Yeah. So this is a quote from Leopold. "A thirst for knowledge is highly commendable, no matter what extreme pain or injury it may inflict upon others. A 6-year-old boy is justified in pulling the wings from a fly if by doing so he learns that without wings the fly is helpless." Also, they compared killing a person to pinning a beetle to a board. So, sociopaths is what we're talking about. Yep. And so yeah, they had no remorse whatsoever. They just talked about it very clinically, as though it was something they had every right to do, and that was why they did it. And even during the whole process, a lot of people commented that they were just very cocky. Like, they just thought they were going to get away with it because obviously they were superior, and why would they get in trouble for just killing an inferior being? So yeah. So as I said, this was a huge like media spectacle. One of the several admittedly crimes that they called like the trial of the century, you know what I mean? Like, this was a big deal. Like, everybody, like, the fucking it was just packed to the rafters. Like, everybody coming in there. It was a media thing, like, all over the world. Like, even in Europe and everywhere, they were printing shit about this.
Yeah, Phantom. Both these dudes are dead. This happened back in the 20s.
Yeah, they were both dead.
They've been dead for fucking ever.
Yeah, they've been dead a long time. But yeah. So
what state was this again?
Chicago. It was Chicago,
Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was Chicago. So at this point, both the kids have confessed, and all of the evidence that they very stupidly left behind points unarguably to their guilt, right? So their families are just kind of like, well, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? They had all the money, the families. So what they decided to do was they were going to hire the very, very famous defense attorney, Clarence Darrow. You probably know that name. He got famous the year after this case. He was very famous for this case too, but he was famous prior to this, which is why they called him, because he was the best known defense attorney in the United States. But he got most famous to people nowadays the following year, 1925, when he defended Scopes, like in the Scopes monkey trial. The teaching of evolution thing, which is very, very famous case, which Inherit the Wind was about. So this was the year before that. So they hire Clarence Darrow because he is known as a champion of the underdog, which obviously these two morons were not, because they were both born with silver spoons in their mouths and had every opportunity given to them and just pissed it all down their legs. But Darrow wanted to take this case for the specific reason of arguing against the death penalty, because he was very against the death penalty. And he knew that the boys were guilty, but he's like, well, he wanted to use it like as a national platform to like argue against the death penalty because he knew that the prosecution was going to try and hang them. So that's really the only reason why he took it. Because like I said, normally he would defend people who were poor against big corporations and things of that nature. That's kind of what he was known for. So this was kind of one of the few cases like this that he took. Now, there was rumors, which I believe are not true, that he was actually paid $1 million in back then money for defending the boys. I don't think that's the case. I think he was just paid the standard fee, but which at that time was $65,000, which is more than $1 million in today's money, but it wasn't $1 million in back then money. Now, what everybody thought was that, well, one, I think there was mixed sentiment. I think people thought because they were very wealthy and white that they would probably walk, or that Clarence Darrow was going to try to pull a not guilty by reason of insanity plea. But Darrow was not that dumb. He's like, look, these two, one, they confessed. Two, the way that they talk about everything, it's very, very clear that this crime was planned within an inch of its life, even though the plan went awry pretty much immediately. But that shows that they were clearly not insane. I mean, this was rational, not rational, but you know what I mean? It was like well thought out, well planned, even though it didn't go the way they wanted it to. So it's like, that's obviously not insanity. So he's like, well, we have to try a different tack. Now, he knew that because these motherfuckers had not only killed a child, but were also completely non-remorseful and were kind of dicks. Like, they were super, super unlikable. They were very condescending, snotty, you know, so a lot of people were like, hang the motherfuckers, you know what I mean? There was no sympathy for them whatsoever. So Darrow kind of had his work cut out for him, honestly. What he decided to do, and probably the only thing he could have done, was he persuaded the two of them to plead guilty. And then he's like, pretty much the only thing I can do for you is to not have you hang, like to just get you life in prison. Because he's like, oh, you're going to get life in prison. He's like, but, you know, the family basically said, please don't hang them. Like, we know that they did it. They confessed. They don't even seem sorry for it. But please, like, don't have them executed. So Darrow decided he was going to do that. So he said, well, the only way I can, he's like, he didn't want to risk going in front of a jury and having to convince 12 random ass people that these two shitheads didn't deserve to get hanged. So he's like, I'm going to just persuade them to plead guilty, which will, you know, forego the whole jury thing. And then I just have to persuade one person, the judge, to, you know, not give them the death penalty. So that's what he decided to do, which, like I said, was pretty much the only thing that he could do. And as it turned out, it was actually pretty effective. Now, at the trial, basically, you know, obviously the prosecutor, whose name was Robert Crowe, he came out with a bunch of psychiatrists, and, you know, he made a thing about, you know, the degeneration of the youth, and like I said, all the gin and the jazz and all the crimes in Chicago and blah, blah, and it's just kind of like, oh, you know, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and blah, blah.
Yeah, they used to think gin was like crack.
Yeah.
If you drank that, you were scum.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Because I feel like now it's like, I like gin, but it's like an old man drink.
It's old
kinda.
man drink, yeah. It's only good in tonic.
I do like a good gin and tonic every now and then, though.
Tonic. Yeah.
I should get some blue, some.
It's not a real versatile booze.
Bombay Sapphire. Well, it's a very. I mean, it has a very, very distinctive. You can't really.
Juniper.
Yeah, you can't really mix it with much because it has a very strong flavor, like on its own. But I like it every now and then. I can't drink much of it because I'll throw up. But it's just kind of like, I really like the taste of it every now and then.
What I liked about gin is that you could drink gin and you wouldn't smell drunk.
You would just smell good.
Yeah,
like juniper berries.
Smell drunk, yeah.
Although, you know. So obviously they're trying to, you know, the prosecutor is trying to make the argument for, because he was actually surprised that the guys came in and pleaded guilty on the recommendation of Darrow. Because like he said, he's like, there's no way. He's like, you guys are guilty, right? He's just like, I'm just going to keep you guys from getting hanged. That's about all I can do at this point. So Crow was trying to get them hanged, and he basically made the argument. He's like, look, these motherfuckers, they're not sorry. It's like they had every privilege, they had every opportunity given to them. They still fucking ended up like this. They're not sorry. We don't need them on this earth. And he was like super dramatic about it too. He's just like, I'm gonna be really upset if you guys don't like kill these motherfuckers, because and honestly, that was kind of the overriding sentiment like in the town, like, and understandably so, because it was a shocking crime. Like I said, there was a lot of crime in Chicago proper, but it was like gangsters and shit. Like people, there was like a reason behind it. It was just like some mobsters like wiping out other mobsters. It was that kind of shit. This kind of thing, nobody had really seen this before. Like two guys that just picked a victim at random and just killed him in just completely cold blood. And like they didn't really even have a reason. They were just kind of like, well, we just wanted to see what it felt like, or because we wanted to show that we could, or something like that. And people were like freaked the fuck out by that. And they thought that it was kind of like a herald of like the downfall of civilization, right? So like, we need to nip this in the bud. We need to like fucking get rid of these motherfuckers, which I get that. I do. But so what Darrow did though was, like a lot of defense attorneys would do nowadays. Like I said, there's only so much you can work with, right? It's like they already confessed, they didn't seem apologetic in any way or anything like that. And like I said, they were super unlikable. So all he could do was try to mitigate it somewhat by basically, I don't know, like basically like describing their personal environments, like the way they had grown up and stuff like that. And also like the societal factors that had maybe played into them ending up like this. So they did point out that that one of them, Leopold, had actually been sexually abused by their governess, by his governess, who he had a sexual relationship. I believe she also had a sexual relationship with his older brother when they were both minors, and she was, so it's, sexual assault basically, or sexual abuse. And so that's, whether it's true or not, I'm not entirely sure. Like most places that I've read said that it was. So he used that as kind of a thing. And also, I believe Loeb also had a governess, because like I said, rich people, who was super, super strict on him, and he was trying to argue that that was kind of a thing too. And I think the prosecuting attorney also tried to bring up the thing that the two of them had raped the boy, but the coroner said there really wasn't any evidence of that. So, but they tried to, like I said, because homosexuality was still illegal at this time, they were trying to play up the degenerate nature of the crime, because it's like, oh, these two, they're super wealthy, they're atheists, and they're gay, so and they're degenerates, you know what I mean? Like I said, the society's just going downhill. And so they tried to play up this aspect. So they tried to, the prosecuting attorney actually did try to kind of massage it to look like they had raped the kid, which as far as I know, they did not. And like the coroner even at the time said, no, that's not what happened.
Probably didn't have time, but if the story was right.
Well, like I said, according to the story they both told, they killed the kid as soon as he got in the car, seconds after he got in the car. They weren't interested. It seemed like they weren't sexually interested in kids. Like I said, they wanted to see what it was like to kill somebody, or they wanted to show that they were superior by showing they could kill somebody and get away with it.
Older than this guy.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, the kid was their victim was 14. Yeah. They were 18 and 19. Leopold was 19 and Loeb was 18.
In the 20s, there would have been no difference. They would have been considered kind of like peers. They didn't have statutory rape type laws and shit like that.
Not
14
back then,
and 18, there was no difference back then. 14, you could marry a girl at 14. You could marry a girl at 14 if you were in your 30s. 40s, as long as the parents fucking said it was all right.
It's a little creepy.
Just the way it was.
Yeah, I know.
14 was almost an adult. They didn't have teenagers.
Doesn't mean it's not creepy.
They didn't have childhood. That's a modern concept.
Yeah, the teenage thing, that didn't really become like a thing until like the 50s.
50s, yeah. Before that time, you were a child, and then you became an adult at like 13.
Yeah, I don't feel like there was as much of a liminal space in between those two things, but like until the 1950s when it became kind of more of a thing.
Yeah, there was no teenager concept.
Not really.
Until the 50s.
Not really. But yeah, so like I said, there was kind of a lot of interest about this because of how a lot of people thought that it signified this moral decay in the youths of America. And there was an evangelical preacher back then, Billy Sunday, who's actually pretty famous because I've heard that name before. And he actually gave a big like revival kind of speech in Chicago, talking about moral miasma and talking about we've abandoned God, all these young intellectuals, and they're just killing people willy-nilly and blah de blah. And he just blamed all of that for the killing, which I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of dumb because if that was true, then you'd have these kind of people murdering people all the time. But it was just these two jackasses, you know what I mean? That thought they were...
No, the sexual orientation isn't a big factor. It's mostly straight
It's
people.
really not. And like I said, that's why it kind of pisses me off when people are talking about... And I know that it was more in the thing back then, but it's just kind of like, oh, they're getting degenerate and blah, blah, blah. But it's just kind of like... I feel like there's still like lingering shit of that, but it's like 99, this is probably not, but 99% of like serial killers like that are straight dudes.
Yeah.
You know, and 95% of molesters are straight dudes.
Yeah.
So let's not get fucking all head up about. And the thing about it is, I think
sexual violence and weird sexual crimes does not directly correlated with the preference. Just because.
Not at all.
If anything, it's all has to do with laws of averages. The law of averages just kind of dictate that a serial killer is going to be straight because most guys are straight.
Yeah.
They had some fucking brutal gay ones like Dean Corll and shit though, and Jeffrey Dahmer. But fucking Dean Corll was much worse than Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer didn't torture his victims, or was not trying to torture his victims. Dean Corll was. He'd put a damn glass rod up your urethra and crush it with a fucking pair of pliers and make two boys beat each other to death, even if they were brothers, to try to avoid torture and shit. He was mean dude. Fucking, he deserved a fate worse than death. But like I said, he still was like statistically representative. I think about 13%, maybe 10% of the serial killers are gay. Yeah,
which tracks to about
10% of the male population is gay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual.
It's not unusual. It's going to be about that. So it's not really. It doesn't matter. But back in this day, they're going to correlate. They're going to say, well, they're gay, and of course they're gay. The gays are criminals, and of course they're going to do this shit.
Yeah. Well, technically, they
with.
were criminals because homosexuality was technically illegal.
Yeah. So of course you're going to
at this time
going to conflate all that shit.
Sure, and it's just you're going to throw all the crimes in the same pot.
Yeah.
All these women with their bobbed hair and their smoking and their Charlestons and all of that. It's
most dudes, whether straight or gay, are all right. Most dudes are all right. Doesn't matter if they're straight or gay.
Most people are all right.
Most people are all right. Yeah.
But that's the thing. You never know.
Right.
If you don't know somebody, you don't know if they're all right or not.
Right.
So they're like Schrodinger's fucked up person. Schrodinger's asshole is what I call it. You don't know what that person.
Most gay dudes I've run across, they're all right. They're not a problem.
Like I said, most people are all right. Most people are all right, or at least inoffensive, or just not.
Yeah.
Or they don't come up on the radar in any way. But
in the club scene,
you always got to watch your back though.
In the club scene, a lot of the coolest guys are gay.
True.
They can know everybody, and they get interconnected and just social. They're real social. They got a lot of friends. Been around for a long time.
But I mean, you could see how, particularly at this time back then, and like I said, evangelicals, old people, shit like that, they're always going to be like, whatever the youths are doing today, that must mean that that's what's causing this one isolated. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it, how horrific it was, because it was horrific, but I'm just saying it was an isolated incident, which is why people still talk about it.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with moral decay. It was just these two motherfuckers who thought they were Nietzsche and Superman.
Yeah.
And they could just kill people, and they wanted to see what it felt like, and they thought they would get away with it because they were geniuses.
You have fucked up fads. fucked up shit goes in and out of style. But in general, the state of moral decay is kind of constant throughout the centuries. It's all about the same. Civilizations start to break down. New civilizations form out of it. Borders change on countries. Shit like that. But people are always people.
Yeah, we're not that different.
It's pretty damn constant. And you can go back and read ancient writings, and the way it's written and the way people react to certain things, like, you know, is pretty consistent. They're not like a different species of people. You know what I mean? Fucking, they were people back then too. They were the same.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't know everything that we know, but that same basic humanity was there.
Yeah. Like I said, I would argue that it's better now just because we know more than they did, just by virtue of being born later. Yeah. But, I mean, in the aggregate, we're not that different.
There's less superstition. And the superstitions that we do have are different kinds of superstitions.
Which is a good thing. But yeah. I mean, but they still persist, though, because that's just what humans
make
are
shit
like.
up.
You get rid of one superstition, another one pops up in its place, because that's just how that's how most people's brains work, unfortunately. Yeah. That's how they evolved to work. And really the only way you can get past it is knowing about it and not
we're in a fucking
doing that.
We're in an important time right now. We're basically kind of like in the same era where the fucking church is collapsing because of the damn invention of the printing press. The internet is the printing press of this era, and it's fucking destroying the old power structures because they just can't fucking lie to us like they used to. If you really want to know what's happening, you can find out. If you're fucking smart enough, you can track it down. But corporations run the fucking nation states, especially in the West, and fucking they controlled us for fucking decades and decades through the television. I know, I lived it. You would not imagine how low information the television used to be, how much they used to lie to us and fucking brainwash us through television. All that shit's fucking gone. I fucking love it. And now everything's interactive. And if you want to find out what happened when some crime happened, you can find somebody's fucking cell phone camera footage of the crime. You don't need some fucking talking head to tell you what happened. You can just see what happened and go, okay, yeah, I know now. And you find out that all these people are fucking making shit tons of money lying to us. You know, I was a contractor. Well, shit, the news fucking agencies are contractors too. They're all being paid. They're all being paid to fucking spin a narrative, to control your mind. And it's been that way for fucking since the fucking 40s. No, before. I think World War II changed a lot of it. But I just like it. I like it where the new age is dawning. It's actually getting better. It's just that it's going to be a rough trip.
That's all right.
Yeah. The old empire is dying. And it has to die because it wasn't right. So, we'll see. It's an age of information and networking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So as I said, so basically all that Darrow could do was try to argue on behalf of these two and try to convince the judge just not to hang them. So Darrow gave what is still considered one of the best legal speeches ever. I believe it went on for 12 hours, over not all at the same time, but like over a couple of days. And he basically argued, he talked a lot about how young they were, which is interesting because I think a lot of people nowadays like have a misperception that it's just like, because they were 18 and 19, which, you know, now you'd consider, well, that's, you know, almost a grown man. But I think he was trying to make it seem more like they were still kids, because I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but at least in Illinois, I think the youngest person that had been hanged at this stage was 23. So he was basically saying these are still kids, right? So he was trying to go with that. And he was also kind of trying to blame the larger societal things that were going on, like for why they did this maybe. Basically he'd say stuff like, One of the quotes from the speech was, "It's hardly fair to hang a 19-year-old boy for the philosophy that was taught to him at the university." Like I said, the Nietzsche shit. He also leaned real hard into how maybe kids today were growing up thinking life was cheap because of all the horrors they had seen because of World War One. So there was that. It's like, oh, we cheer when 100,000 of our enemy are killed, and kids are growing up in that environment, so it's no wonder that they turn out like this, kind of like that. And he also said, it's like, after a war, there's always like an uptick in crime. Like after the Civil War, there's an uptick in crime and things like that. So he was arguing that also. So like I said, he gave this big long speech about it, and he also leaned hard into Leopold and Loeb's parents, like how they had so much hope for these two. It's like they were so promising, and now their entire hope in the kids was dashed, and it's like their kids' lives were ruined, and think of their parents and stuff like that. So he tried to go with that. Like I said, it's all he could do, really. He's a defense attorney, so he's trying to have mercy on them. And like I said, the thing about Darrow was that, and from all that I've read about Clarence Darrow, he was a real stand-up guy, and he was just vehemently he was just on the side of the underdog like his entire life, and he was very, very against the death penalty. He just thought it was a horrible injustice, and he fought against it like pretty much in his whole entire career, which is pretty much the only reason he took this case on, because this isn't normally the type of case he would take with these wealthy defendants. Normally, like I said, he was defending like downtrodden or people with no money against larger, powerful corporations or people. So that's why he wanted to take it, because he wanted to argue against the death penalty. So he gave this very long and very impassioned argument. And the thing about it, everything that I heard, was that after it was over, the judge was apparently crying, as were a lot of other people in the courtroom. As I said, in legal circles, it is considered one of the best, legal arguments like ever given. And it was very, it's over the top, but that's a lot of the shit back then was. And knowing what they did, you're just kind of like, man, really? But you can see where he's coming from. The aggregate of that was, like the outcome, was that the judge was apparently convinced by Darrow's argument. And he agreed that the boys should not be executed. Although he came out and said later that he's like, the only reason that I think they shouldn't be hanged is because of how young they are. That's what he said. Yeah. 18 and 19. Like I guess he didn't want to say that the speech had, tipped his hand or moved him or whatever.
Had them kids been fucking black, they'd have been fucking...
Well, and a lot of people said that too, because this trial, the arguments and shit, this went on for more than a month.
Yeah.
And I have seen like some other articles about this that said if those kids had not been white and wealthy, that would have been like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Hang them.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were given that privilege, I think a lot of people did recognize that.
They were doing it for the parents, not for the kids, though.
Yeah. I think that was kind of what it was. I think people felt bad.
Be honest, though. That's what it was back then.
Yeah.
They'd have been like, well, these are white kids, and fucking their parents would get pissed off if we kill them.
Yeah, and it's like we can't look like we're just killing these.
Yeah. We can't kill
upstanding members of society.
Yeah. We'll look
like you said, if they were poor or some other color.
No, if they'd been white trash or black, they'd fucking hang them.
Then they wouldn't even think, they wouldn't even 2 seconds. Like I said, the fact that they were given, it was like 32 days. I think the trial went on 32 days. And like I said, I did read a couple articles that said that would absolutely not have happened if they weren't white and wealthy. Absolutely not. Which, I agree with that. Especially not back then. And not nowadays either.
And they wouldn't even really question it that much. Although you said some people did, though, huh? They're like, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah. I mean, some people did back then. Had this been
anybody else, you'd have be fucking
right. Yeah, people weren't dumb. Like, some people did know that back then, but they recognized that privilege. But like I said, it's not...
Class.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Social class.
Big time. But yeah. So they didn't get the death penalty. However, they did both get life plus 99 years. The life was for the murder. The 99 years was for the kidnapping. Not too long. I think it was only a month after the conviction. Loeb's father actually keeled over from a heart attack. So they sent them both to Joliet prison in Illinois at first. They tried to keep them apart, but they did kind of maintain their friendship, like writing letters back and forth and everything like that. Leopold got transferred to Stateville Penitentiary in 1925 because he had to have his appendix out. And then Loeb got transferred there 5 years later. And they were overjoyed when they got reunited. And they actually got together and started a program at the prison, they were like teaching high school and like junior college classes and shit like that. So they did do shit while they were in prison.
Yeah, but they're in prison though.
Yeah. Now, in 1936, so they haven't been in prison that long, Loeb was attacked by a fellow inmate named James Day. James Day cut him up with a straight razor.
Damn, wonder how he got that.
And he died. Loeb died in the prison hospital later on. Now, later on, Day claimed that Loeb had attempted to sexually assault him, although nobody really believed this because Loeb was actually, the short time he was in prison, was actually a model prisoner, whereas Day was kind of known as being a little rapey.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Probably
So
the
they
other way
thought it
around.
was probably the other way around, and because they noted that Day had no injuries whatsoever, and Loeb had more than 50 wounds, like including like all over his arms,
You
like
said
he
it
was
killed him?
like he was trying, he was trying to like fight him off. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It has been speculated maybe that one of them made a sexual proposition to the other and then got upset about it, but whatever.
I guarantee you came up to that boy and says, "You gonna give it up?" He's like, "Nah, fuck you."
Well, now one of the wound that killed him, I think Day came up from behind him and slashed his throat.
Yeah.
And then they fought and he was like, yeah. So there was that. Now Day was actually later found not guilty by a jury. Now, so there's that. And a lot of people thought, "Hey, good on you killing that dude," which honestly,
What was it? What was Day in there for?
I don't know actually. I think he sexually assaulted another inmate, so I assume it was some kind of like sexual, maybe he's a rapist or a murderer or something like that. I heard somewhere that they were cellmates, but I don't know if that's true. I think he was just like another inmate. But he got off with it.
It was a lover's
anyway.
quarrel.
Who knows? But he got off with it anyway. And like I said, a lot of people like thought, "Ooh, what a hero," you know what I mean? Which is, it's a little bit weird. Like I understand like why people would think, because Loeb was like, no one's gonna be sad that he's dead, you know what I mean? But it's kind of both
It
of them.
wasn't part of the deal though.
Both of them are kind of
during
shitty.
incarceration. They're supposed to be kind of like taking care of you and protecting you from other inmates. The sentence was life, not death.
And the fact that he got a straight razor, that Day got a
Yeah,
straight
how'd
razor
that
from
happen?
somewhere, I imagine somebody slipped him that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine that's what happened. But yeah, so Loeb was killed in prison by another inmate. I think he was only in for like 3 years or 4 years, something like that, and he got killed in prison. Leopold, however, he was, still in prison, and he actually became a model prisoner. You wouldn't think it because he was such an arrogant douche, but he did actually kind of get his shit together. Whether it was for any real remorse, I don't really think it was, or because he was just trying to show everybody what a cool guy he was now so he could get out. I think it was probably that second thing. But he did like work really hard to, like, the prison that he was in, he started all these new programs and helped in the library and all this other kind of stuff, and taught classes and stuff like that. So he was not being completely useless. He also volunteered, because I think in the 40s they went around to all these prisons and they wanted to do a malaria study. They were testing out all these new drugs they had for malaria. And so they went around to prisons asking for volunteers, like, "Hey, we're going to infect you with malaria to see if these drugs work." And
Fuck that.
well, no, and a lot of prisoners volunteered because they said, "Hey, we'll knock like 10 years off your sentence," or some shit like that.
That much? Damn.
Yeah. So I heard that Leopold got 10 years knocked off his sentence, but
Damn.
even though he had life plus 99. So you know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, we'll get to that.
How does that work?
But he volunteered
Yeah.
for the malaria study. And I think he also volunteered it wasn't like but he said that he would give his eyes also, like his corneas, like cornea transplant, like after he died. So he gave that to you. Now, he's still in prison in the early 1950s, and the author, like somebody brought it up earlier, the book Compulsion. So the guy that wrote it was a guy named Meyer Levin. And he had, I don't know if he knew Leopold, but they had gone to University of Chicago. I don't know if it was the same time or whatever. But he's like, I'm going to write a book about you, but it's about you, but it's like fictionalized. It's like a novel, but it's based on you. You know what I mean? Like the name is changed and stuff like that. So he's like, is that okay? And Leopold is like, no, but I'm writing a memoir, and you can, collaborate with me on that if you want. But Meyer was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. So he just went ahead and wrote the book anyways. And the book was actually published in 1956. And in the book, the character of Leopold is actually called Judd Steiner. And it's kind of pretty much based on the real thing. And they made it into a movie in 1958, I want to say, was when the movie came out. And Leopold flipped the fuck out. Leopold also wrote an autobiography, which is called Life Plus 99 Years. And he said that when he read the book and saw the movie, he was like flipped out about it. But see, he tried to sue, but because he's saying it's like it was defamation and all this other kind of stuff. And the court was like, bro, you murdered a 14-year-old. You can't be defamed. All right, calm down. It was that kind of thing. Like, they didn't say that exactly, but that was like the gist of it.
Right.
They're like, you can't expect anyone to
worry about your reputation.
When you did what you did and you made this big deal about it, like you were what?
That isn't on.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
Okay, I'll try to turn it on. Turn it on for the show.
Well, now the show's almost over. Well, I didn't notice. I didn't notice it was off.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it was off.
There we go.
So, a lot of people have argued, so Leopold did all of this stuff in prison, whether out of the good of his heart, I don't think so, or because he was trying to get out. Whatever was the case, he did actually succeed in getting out. He actually did a bunch of different petitions and stuff, which were like for parole, which were unsuccessful. But he did actually get released on parole in March of 1958. He had been in prison for 33 years at that point. Now, when he got out, he actually moved to Puerto Rico. And he got a job as a medical technician, like an x-ray technician or something, because he had done that in the prison hospital as well. And yeah, he moved there and worked as a lab assistant, x-ray assistant, and apparently never killed anybody else that anybody knew of. And he also got married to a woman who was a florist. She was a widow. Her name was Gertrude Feldman. They got married in 1961. And then he went on and got a master's degree and taught at the University of Puerto Rico. And he did like all kind of stuff. Like he did leprosy studies. He actually got back into his ornithology and like wrote a book about all the birds of Puerto Rico and shit like that. So he did some shit after. I saw some weird, because obviously after he got out, I don't want to say he was like a celebrity, but he was like pretty well known. You know what I mean? And so he was on like some talk shows and stuff. And I saw like some clips of him from some talk shows like in the 50s and early 60s, like old black and white stuff. And he was saying stuff like, well, all the stuff that I've done, it's like if I'd been hanged back in 1925 or whatever, like none of that stuff would be done and everything, which is true. I mean, he became like a big advocate against the death penalty, obviously. But I kind of feel like even though he was a celebrity and he did have a lot of other kind of famous people, like Carl Sandburg, the poet, who's that crime writer, like Earl Stanley Gardner, I think his name is, like that were advocates of his. And it's like, look, he's completely reformed. He was just a kid when he did it, blah, blah, blah. So they were arguing for, like, against the death penalty. And they're like, look, reform works, like in some cases, which, okay. But I don't know. It was hard to tell anything from him talking because he was so much older. And he obviously wasn't coming across like an arrogant teenage douche like he did in the old days. So it was kind of hard to say. So he didn't live horribly long. Like after he got out, He actually died when he was 66, like in 1971. So, as I mentioned, this case is still very, very famous, even though it happened back in the 1920s, and it's been the subject of and the inspiration for lots and lots of stuff. As I mentioned, the play, it actually started out as a play, Rope, from 1929, which obviously Alfred Hitchcock made into a movie in 1948. And Compulsion, which somebody brought up, which was a novel, and then it was a movie also, like later on in 1959. And then there was also a book called Nothing But the Night, that was also based on it, and there was one called Little Brother Fate. And also Michael Haneke's Funny Games, which was an Austrian film, and then it was remade as like an American English film, which is actually very good if you haven't seen it, was very loosely based on this. As was the 2002 film Murder by Numbers, and also the loose inspiration for the Ghostface killers in Scream. So there's that as well, even though it's, you know, it's very loose, obviously. But it was one of the things. But there's like a lot of other graphic novels, a lot of other references to this, but it's a very, very famous case.
This case kind of reminds me, in a certain way, from that case back in the 90s, where those two high school boys, those two white boys, decided they were watching all these slasher flicks like Scream and shit. They decided they were going to kill some of their own friends.
Yeah.
Remember that? And they even recorded, they videotaped themselves.
Yeah. Didn't we see a documentary or show about that?
In the car, driving away from the murder scene, laughing about it. So I'm sorry, we had to do our thing. We had to kill you guys. And it was like a friend of theirs and his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right. We did watch something about that.
Yeah. And they went through the whole thing about what it was like to kill him and shit. And they just thought it was fun. Like it was something funny. It wasn't a real deal. Wasn't the fucking a big deal or anything. They immediately got arrested.
Well, yeah.
And the cops saw that video and they were just fucking doing mental backflips. Like, what are these fucking kids thinking? They hadn't been in any trouble before. They just got it into their heads that it'd be really cool to kill their friends with a knife. If I remember correctly, it was knives, butcher knives and shit.
Which is great. Like I said, you never know.
Fucking crazy.
I mean, the thing about it is that Xanada makes the point. He says reform works, and yeah, in some situations it does. But someone is still missing a kid because of this guy, and that's kind of where I'm ambivalent about it, because I kind of feel like, would I have felt bad if these two motherfuckers had been hanged back in 1925 or whatever? Nah, probably not. I mean, if anybody deserved it, probably they did. And they weren't even sorry.
They went out of their way to kill the kid. They'd been planning it.
Sure.
To kill somebody.
And they just picked somebody at random.
Yeah, they can't,
It didn't even have to. It might not even been that kid if it was a different day.
This isn't the same fucking situation where you're in an argument with somebody, you're both fucking manning up on one motherfucker, and you're fighting and you kill the dude. You know, it's not.
It's a completely different situation.
These dudes here,
just completely cold.
Talking about we're gonna kill somebody cold. Who they're even saying we might kill that little girl that lives over there. Just no, you gotta go. Just thinking that way, you gotta go.
But the interesting thing about it is that even though Loeb was killed in prison, like I said, and I don't think anybody feels bad about that. You know, not saying that the guy that did it was a great person either, because he obviously was a piece of shit too. But I mean, Leopold did actually, I don't know if he ever apologized. The weird thing about it was that the autobiography that he wrote, which was, I think was called Life Plus 99 Years, I mentioned it earlier, he didn't really talk about the crime. And the clip that I saw of him, like, from a talk show, which I guess was, I think it was from, like, the early 60s, they asked him about it, and he's like, I don't want to talk about that. So it's like, I don't know if he was just trying to, I don't know, just like kind of buff his reputation and being like, I'm this person now, I'm not that person anymore. Which, okay, like, I don't even remember shit I did when I was 19. So I get that. But like you said, still, the Franks family lost their kid, and they will never get over that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is...
Erica says she thinks if you take a life, you get life. No, I don't believe that either. Because not every homicide is a murder. You have situations where two dudes are willingly fighting each other to the death. They're both trying to commit murder on one another over something else, maybe a woman. That's not quite the same thing as fucking one dude murdering somebody who's an innocent person who has nothing to do with anything. You know, they're not willingly going into combat with somebody.
Yeah, there's no emotional engagement on any level. It's just like a very cold,
you gotta look at it
calculating.
This way. I'm a fucking ex-professional soldier. Old men had the power to put me in a uniform and send me to another country to murder foreign dudes that were no different than me, other than the fact that they were wearing another suit, so they could remain rich. Okay? If those people have a right to send me off to some war to kill their enemies, why don't I have a right to go to fucking war and kill one of my enemies if he wants to fight me? It used to be legal. It's called dueling.
Yeah.
Which I believe dueling needs to be brought back. If legal dueling, you say that motherfucker, I can't live on the planet with him. He's an enemy. I want to declare war against him. You have your lawyers and everything. You declare war.
Yeah, there'd have to be like a
dude.
framework. You can't just do it.
We're going to fucking go to a certain place at a certain time, and if that dude accepts the fucking challenge, then he fucking he goes to the duel. If he goes, no, I don't want to go to the duel, then he bows out, and then you win honor. Okay, so you see, he didn't want to fight over it. So you retract what you said. Or you fucking get away from me. Or I'm going to do it again. I'm going to declare war on you.
Yeah, you could have all kind of conditions. Like, if you don't want to duel, then you have to, like, publicly apologize or blah, blah, or whatever. Or you have to stay within, like, 50 miles away from me or whatever.
But it's the same thing as international politics between two nations. They do it.
Yeah.
Why can't an individual do it? But it has to be legal.
Yeah, like I said, you'd have to have a whole framework. You can't just...
If they have a right to send you to war, then that means you have a right to defend your own honor in a war against somebody else. A personal enemy. Doesn't mean you can murder them. It means you can declare war on them. And they fucking can either say, okay, I give, or okay, we'll fight it out. That shit between dueling was never adjudicated. They just kind of agreed to ban it. No one ever argued it. There have been lawyers recently saying that shit was not really... That just getting rid of dueling without any kind of adjudication might be unconstitutional. That seems to be constitutional. The right to duel. That would solve a lot of problems. Because you have to remain polite. All right? But they got a whole mess of motherfuckers that make a living off of being an asshole. Okay? So they don't want that around. Because they might have to back up what they're saying. Just think about it. You're on the news. And you lie about somebody. Your news reporter, you talk shit about him, and he declares a duel against you, and you have to either decline or accept. Well, that they don't want that because they don't want to look like a pussy in front of the public, you know, because they would decline, most of them.
Well, I imagine most people.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of rules with dueling.
Because I'm sure most of the shit be super dumb.
Yeah,
like, somebody ran into my cart at Walmart.
Yeah,
duel, motherfucker. It'll be like that.
Yeah, but it costs money, though, to duel. You have to get a lawyer. You know what I mean? Usually, if you challenge somebody for a duel, you gave the advantage to them. They get to pick the weapons. So you know, you couldn't just challenge a motherfucker to duel, and then you already know what weapon you're going to choose because you're an expert at that weapon. The other guy chooses the weapon.
Right.
And all that shit fucking was personal warfare, personal legal warfare, which really should be constitutional under the American Constitution. Because if you want to do it, who is the state to stop you?
Yeah, I mean, there is an argument for that, sure.
If a dude challenged me and I fucking thought it was a good challenge over someone said, okay, I accept a duel. But that'd be my right.
What would you duel over, Tom? I'm curious.
Honor shit.
Honor shit.
Depending on what it was.
Not somebody running into your cart at Walmart.
No. No. Something they said.
Because I know some people would
accusations they made. Something like that.
I know some people would duel over.
A lot of the presidents had duels. Fucking Thomas Jefferson. What was that? That was it fucking Jackson. Jackson, I think he killed 2 in duels, wasn't it? I know he killed one dude out in front of the fucking White House lawn. Doing a duel.
It was crazy.
I think what was it, Hamilton? I think he dueled. He killed a dude in a duel. It just should be a human right to challenge somebody to a duel. Yeah, fucking right.
Xana said, I'd be okay with dueling, but you still have to use flintlock pistols.
Well, you could change the duel. The duels would have to be fair to a certain extent.
Well, obviously.
But
like I said, there'd have to be
we're,
rules.
we're high tech though now. You could do you could choose that. You could choose the flintlock thing, but maybe you could also choose something that's kind of like out of that Hunger Games, where you're in a big open
Right.
wilderness and there's weapons throughout the place.
It's like, I want to hunt you, motherfucker.
Yeah, it could be anything. Could be a bunch of different kinds of duels,
really.
and you televise and monetize the shit.
I don't get mad enough about anything about that. So
I would want my shit monetized and live streamed.
because some people get mad about really stupid shit, and I just kind of feel like, but I mean, I guess in a way,
the winner takes the prize money.
if everybody dueled, then that would wipe most of the people off the earth, and maybe everybody would be more chill from then on.
It would
out.
chill. It would make sure that the
Because people would stop getting upset about stupid shit.
Make sure the shit talkers
Stuff
could
that
actually
doesn't
back the
matter.
shit up. Well, you got MMA already. That's almost like a duel. It's not to the death. And here's another thing: is that the duel doesn't have to be to the death.
Yeah.
It's just until somebody yields.
Yeah, Xanadu even said most duels didn't end in
Yeah,
death.
most
Yeah,
of them
which they didn't. I kind of feel like that's a misperception.
It was like the misperception is that somebody died. Usually somebody cried uncle.
Yeah,
They're
it
like,
was
fuck it, okay.
Like they got shot in the
can't
leg
go
or
through
some
this
shit. Or
yeah,
whatever.
they're like, I ain't going through this shit. You win.
They're like, all right, fine.
Yeah, that's usually what happened.
All right, you don't have stupid hair. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right, your wife wasn't fucking around on you. Yeah, I didn't fuck your wife. That's a lot of it. That's what a lot of it was.
I mean, yeah, it was. To be honest.
honest.
Which, like I said, everybody would just fight about stupid shit. They would just fight about like stupid rumors.
That ain't stupid.
That people. are,
That's
like,
not
brought up.
stupid. Somebody fucking your wife?
Well,
You
no,
find
I'm
out
just.
about it, you challenge that bitch for a duel.
Well, what if nobody was really fucking your wife? It was just like a rumor about it, and then you were like,
Well, the dude would come out and say that. It's just a rumor. I wasn't doing it. I didn't do it.
okay.
And then he doesn't accept the duel.
It's like people are dying over the shit.
yeah.
It's like that didn't even happen.
No. Lawyers will make all kinds of money.
Dudes are so silly.
Yeah. It's not silly though.
They'll die over it.
Well, what's more silly is they fucking try to fucking send me fucking to other countries and kill other people. Fucking
Well, that's
Saddam
also-
Hussein and all
that's
that shit.
also silly.
It's also fucking silly. Yeah, to keep some rich dude on his fucking.
I agree.
And I was just to keep some rich motherfucker on his sex island with the underage girls. That's what that shit is about.
Well, you know,
Like it's like ancient Rome.
rich people can just do whatever they want.
They do whatever the fuck they want.
Like I
Don't
said.
serve them. If I had a son today in the army, I'd fucking slap a piss out of him. Never be in this army. Not in the modern army. My era, we had an excuse. We didn't have the internet. So, you know what I mean? You could kind of believe the lies they were telling back then. But now you have enough information that you should never serve the U.S. military. Because it has nothing to do with the U.S. people. Nothing. It has to do with an empire. An empire of fat pedos. That's what it is. Just like ancient Rome.
Phantom is asking, did the victim's family or the killer's family move after all this went down since they lived across from one another? I imagine they did, but I don't remember reading anything about that. I mean, yeah, because they did like live right across the street from each other. So I imagine that was probably one of them moved. I would think. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. Yeah, can you imagine like looking out the window and saying like, hey, that's the motherfucker's family that killed my kid?
Oh, Erica's going, it'll become the Wild West again. You're making me mad, Erica.
Why you get mad?
Because the
dudes
Wild
getting
West.
mad about
Because the
nothing.
Wild West is peaceful compared to today. It's much worse than the Wild West ever was today. That wouldn't be going back to the Wild West would not be getting worse. That would be actually progress.
Well,
It's
not
more violent now than it ever
It's not
was.
comparable though, because
Yeah.
the Wild West, like it was out west, and the population density was like super
Yeah,
low.
there weren't anybody out there.
So, like I said, when you heard about like some big, like the gunfight at the OK
Yeah.
Corral, it was like what, like 10 dudes or some
No,
shit like that,
4 or
like
5.
4 dudes. Like yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big deal because
Back then,
there
yeah,
wasn't that many
You're right.
people out
Yeah,
there.
the most
at that time.
wildest shootout of the Old West was basically the OK Corral shootout. If that were to happen today, it wouldn't even make the news.
No, of course not, because it would be
No.
like nothing.
That's nothing.
But yeah, but like I said, the population is significantly,
Yeah.
exponentially much larger than it was
Yeah.
back then. Like hardly anybody lived out there back then.
Right.
You know.
Well,
So-
they were writing books about it too. They were writing dime store
Yeah.
books that immortalized it.
Yeah, and that was another thing too, is that they romanticized it, like,
Yeah.
in the media, like in novels and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So people have a,
Yeah.
like, that kind of view of it.
Modern Chicago is far more violent than the Wild West ever was.
Eric says I'm just making jokes. Don't be
Yeah,
mad.
yeah.
Well, that's what I tell him. Like, don't get mad. I don't understand why you're getting mad.
I just like to put shit into proper context.
I know, but we're just making jokes, Tom.
Okay.
Just settle down. Settle down. Don't get mad.
Hey, man.
Don't get mad and like challenge people to duels and shit.
Yeah, man.
Phantom says life sentence prisoners should be forced into participating in exploration of uncharted places on Earth or off-world. Yeah, send them like in fucking submarines and put them underwater. Like I said, I'm not real. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I hate these two motherfuckers because, like I said, not only do they kill an innocent child, which is fucked up, but then they had to be like arrogant, snotty douchebags on top of it, like in Nietzsche edgelords. And I was just kind of like, Jesus Christ, why do you have to like make it even worse? So I just wanted to punch both of them in the fucking taint. So I get that. I get that everybody at the time was just like, let's just fucking hang them. Like, please, let's just get it over with. Because they were super not likable. But like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the death penalty. Although, we've talked about a lot of serial killers on here who I absolutely don't feel bad about them getting it. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about these two not getting hanged. At least Leopold did do some good before he cacked. You know, whether he reformed for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, at least he didn't do anything bad again that we know of. So that's something. So I guess he was reformed in one sense. And they were very young and stupid. So there was that. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. I don't know. How do you feel about it? Do you think they should have been hanged back in 1925? 1924?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Darrow is making the argument. He's like,
Yeah.
well, would the community be served by that? He's like, they're going to be in prison anyway.
Well, you have to look at it. You have to look at equal treatment under the law. Okay. The average person would have been hanged.
And yeah,
They made an exception for these two because they came from
money.
proper families.
Sure.
And I think they mostly did it to protect their relatives, their mothers and fathers and shit.
But I guess they didn't really have the same
I
consideration for the poor.
Poor people, they're like, yeah, well, fuck your parents. We're gonna,
right.
Y'all are disposable anyway.
It's like, they weren't gonna amount to anything anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Don't you can have another one? Don't worry about it.
You gotta understand the way the more elite people see poor people.
Well, yeah,
they see them as disposable.
Yeah.
That there's lots of them and that they're redundant. It's the same person over and over again.
Like
they
NPCs.
live in the same damn house over and over again. In that house is that same junk over and over again. They don't get anything out of you. You know what I mean? Your existence is just generic. So if you do something wrong, they just fucking kill you. People that are like middle class and above, they see them as like, well, yeah, these are a little more rare. These are like real people. You know.
I think that's kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of why this case was such a big deal because, oh my God, real people.
These are real people that did
murdered another real person instead of just those pores.
Yeah.
You know.
And really, man, it's sad to say there's nothing that can ever change that. It's been that way for fucking 6,000 years of human history.
I mean, it is kind of depressing.
That's just the way it is.
And it's still
if
like
you're
that
part
now.
of the fucking masses, the regular people, you're disposable.
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like
you
I said,
die, no one notices.
People are more aware of it now
Yeah.
than they were in 1924, but it's not.
Yeah, when you die, they don't really
that much
notice.
better.
They don't notice. You're just replaced by another one that's just like you. So they don't care about you. This is the way it is. The way it's always been. We weren't really meant for this. We were meant to live in a little tribal communities of 100 people. Everybody knows each other. Everybody cares about each other. You start getting in these big civilizations, you ain't worth shit. It was like that in ancient Egypt. They had damn court transcripts of people who was robbing the fucking graves of those tombs of those pharaohs. And before they're being sentenced, the people were like, man, you're wasting all this money on these rich people. They're dead. That gold can't help them in the afterlife. They're gone. I need it to feed my family. Those people were all executed anyway.
Yeah. Even though they were 100% right.
100% right, yeah. They were wasting all that gold on those dead people.
Xander said, I believe the case you guys were referring to earlier about the friends who killed their female friend was Cassie Jo Stoddart.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
The one where the two guys videotaped their reaction after stabbing their friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we saw it. I don't know. It wasn't on Unsolved Mysteries, but I think we saw it on like a true crime
We ought to
show.
do a show on that if there's enough there to do it.
Yeah, I'll write it down.
That's a good one.
Because, yeah, I remember we watched a show about it not too long ago on Netflix or something.
Yeah, just goofy, young, high school white dudes. They kind of reminded me
where
of
do these people get these fucking ideas, man?
Of Kevin Klebold and all that from the
Dylan Klebold.
and from that school,
Columbine
school. Yeah, they were kind of like that. The feel of the personality.
I don't know, man. I don't really get...
Edgelord.
Yeah.
White edgelords. White middle-class edgelords.
Like, are they
kids.
born like that? Like, do they just not have any empathy? Because that seems to be the main issue.
They're coming from middle-class schools, middle-class areas, and they don't really have hard lives per se in terms of like getting food and getting clothing and shit like that. For them, what's difficult is social acceptance of their peers in that school. They want to be accepted by their peers in the school, but they're not being accepted. So then they rebel against that, and they try to get revenge on the fucking people that they know. So it's kind of like first world problems, you know?
Yeah, big time.
And they have pretty good intelligence, and then they misuse that intelligence. They can't think their way out of those problems. Like those Columbine shooters, had they shut the fuck up and just waited a year or so, they'd have been out of that school. They'd been down at the club and all
Just
that shit.
being fucking normal.
Yeah, and getting girlfriends and shit. But they were just all wrapped up in what was happening in that school, and then trying to be a big shot and get revenge for being insulted at school.
And like literally, after you're out of high school, like nobody
None of that
gives
shit
a
matters.
shit anymore. Yeah. And if they do, then you don't want to hang out with those people anymore. Because you literally forget all about it.
Yep.
After a few years. So, I don't know, man. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like
So
I said,
this one's done, right?
yes.
All right, let's go ahead and shut it down.
All
I'm
right.
gonna get something to eat. I got
So-
that half a sandwich, remember?
Yeah, you got half a sandwich left.
Yeah.
I might just like toast a bagel or something.
Okay, yeah.
Because we got a bagel left, right?
Yeah, there's two bagels left.
Oh, well, I'm not.
And
I'm not gonna eat two.
There's melted butter in the oven.
Okay.
I got a stick
cream
of butter
cheese
in
too,
there
right?
and cream cheese.
We got a stick of butter and cream
Yeah.
cheese. Holy crap! All right.
Yeah, Xander was saying that girl they killed was beautiful too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't that long ago. It was just a couple months back we watched a documentary about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and they killed her like something out of a slasher flick, and their friend who was dating her. They just thought that was so fucking cool. They went in there, yeah, man, well, and they were like, oh, well, sorry. You guys are great, man, but we had to kill you. And I was like, what the fuck, man?
Like, I don't understand.
I had to cut that boy's head off.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I had to cut that boy's head
I
off.
can't really blame you.
From the
Yeah.
back. Start cutting from the back.
So it takes longer.
It takes longer, yeah. You don't want to get
So he knows what's
You
happening.
want to stay away from those arteries, so I just start cutting it from the back.
Yeah, I mean,
With a serrated blade.
like I
Takes
said,
time.
I don't understand. Like people,
Yeah.
I get that some people like just completely lack empathy, and they just think that
Yeah.
other people are NPCs, and
Yeah. They're NPCs, though.
yeah,
That's
well,
really what it
obviously,
is. Yeah.
So it's like maybe they think because they don't feel any empathy, they
think
think
other-
everyone
yeah.
else is like that too. Like they're horrible,
They're
and
like
they think
robots.
they
Yeah.
think everyone else is like that too. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
they're not.
They're not real, so
You're
nobody
just
else is real.
you're just broken.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So we are gonna wrap it up for this evening. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the show tonight. And we'll be back on Friday night doing the sidetrack show, having some drinks, talking about whatever bullshit. Maybe having the sex doll in the background. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll bring her. I'm
With a
putting
different-
tattoos on her.
Oh yeah, that's right. Tom got some fake tattoos.
Got some fake tattoos and put some
He's putting a tramp stamp on there.
tramp stamp on her. And little, they're all little punk rock girl fucking tattoos.
It's like hilarious.
Little fucking
He's
skulls and bows.
He's doing
and
all
shit.
this. He's
Fucking-
probably gonna put something on me while I'm sleeping or some shit like
I
that.
know
I'll
it.
wake up and I'm gonna have like fake tattoos all over me or some shit. But yeah, so yeah, you'll get to see that on Friday. All right, so thank you everybody for hanging out with us this evening. Thank you for your super chats. We will see you guys again on Friday night. Good night.